Hey guys, we are back. I'm back for Shonen Ronin. I'm after 2 long breaks and 3 long weeks. I'm finally able to talk about some new chapters within Shonen Ronin. For this episode, we are going to be talking about Kaiju number 8, chapter 58, 59, Jujutsu Kaisen, chapter 180, Undead Unluck, chapter 105, and One Piece 1035. We don't have Vash with us just yet, but he will be back in just in time to talk about One Piece. And you know what? We're not going to slip a little bit of Black Clover because, something is being hinted. So let's just see our faces. Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Shonen Ronin. We are back with our boy, Aniki Smash FSP. And he's back. We all loved last week's episode where we talked about that One Piece talk. I just want to know, is it as hype as last week's chapter?
I think it counts as like more hype, almost unquestionable.
Okay. That's fair.
Like, because it's one thing to, get like these reveals and like talk about like, oh yeah, like Luffy is this, but like kind of seeing one, just how ridiculous we're actually talking about stuff being. But I'm not gonna talk too much about it because we got to save the One Piece for when Vash gets here. So just push all the One Piece thoughts to later. Just push them towards later.
Heard. We're gonna start this off like we always start off. We're gonna start with Kaiju number 8. I know we haven't been talking about that for a while because it's going back to its bi-weekly chapters. But back to back, 58 and 59 has been very solid chapters for this new arc.
Almost definitely. I'm glad to see we got our boy back. Our best boy of the series has returned. After I actually went back looking, guys. It's from the mid-20s.
Yes. Okay, I thought he had been gone for a while.
It's from the mid-20s that we have not seen him in the series and it doesn't feel that way because like the story just kept progressing so much that we didn't realize like, oh, a thing happened and then another thing happened and then another big thing happened.
It was like learn about this platoon, learn about this captain, learn about this captain, learn about this vice captain. And so it's like we were on a path that was like so still expository.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what's cool about this is that I think to a certain degree Kaiju number 8 is fun, but it's felt very by the numbers in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think with this chapter and like with these couple chapters have kind of shown us is that for all intents and purposes, this was like all one big prologue to the actual Kaiju battle, Kaiju war that we need to be focusing on. And so it's kind of like it did some stuff that was cool, exploratory, and like, like familiar with, the whole Kaiju weaponization system. Because like especially if you read like Tokyo Ghoul or if you played Monster Hunter, you're kind of familiar with the whole harvesting monster parts for weapons trope. Which play Monster Hunter, great game. But
I tried. literally tried to play Monster Rise last night.
Yeah, we both were like trying to do multiplayer, but internet connections. It's
dude, okay, so we might have to do a friend code exchange after
Let's
this.
go.
Let's do this.
The party grows.
I'm still kind of a beginner. I need to train for that.
What weapons you like in? Because I'm an Insect Blade main.
I used to do Insect Blade with a DS, but like I think I've messed up my buttons on a DS because using Insect Blades.
Yes, so I literally just character creation. I've owned that game for literally a year. I just character creation. It's all Sam's fault, actually.
I had to. I mean, like you needed motivation. You needed people to play.
I needed a push. I needed a reason to play. So yeah, we'll definitely exchange and link up. We've been trying to do Saturdays, so let us know, Aniki. But Insect Glaive is definitely the weapon. I'm not using that this playthrough though. I'm definitely going to use the dual swords I'm feeling right now. Because I've never actually tried them to let them be useful. And then if I go back later in the game, I might switch into one of the charge weapons just to try it out.
I gotta let you know I'm like HR 100 something.
That's fine. You can show us the way.
So
that sounds good.
Yeah, I was gonna say like dual blades are fucking great on this game, and especially because they have like bonus little moves and stuff. So when you get to see them, like you can basically surf on a dragon now pretty reliably if you do it right. So you got some nice tasty stuff. But Kaiju number 8.
Yes.
Kaiju number 8.
The new compatibility of weapon number 6. And
so did y'all see that little glimpse of weapon number 6, aka the king of kaijus, aka that silhouette in the background that looked very similar to a king of kaijus that a lot of us are probably really familiar with in the
he has a lot of tails. He's a lot more tails than our usual boy.
Like okay,
but he definitely looking that silhouette in the water was definitely very Godzilla-esque, very reminiscent of that silhouette. So
I think my favorite thing about this is that we've been apart from him for so long that as we dive into this kaiju and we get the backstory on, which you're correct, looks like a extra-tailed Godzilla. I think we're about to actually get some of the more unique lore for Kaiju number 8, where it's about to start getting where it's about to really start setting itself apart from other Kaiju stories.
Mm-hmm.
At least this feels like the moment for it to really get to push off and do that, because we'll get to explain the Godzilla thing. And then, of course, that means we're getting somebody with a heavy, more likely like a laser beam or something.
I mean, it is the same Kaiju that, like, literally destroyed a lot of the vision. It killed Shimiya's mom. They just cut it close to actually beating like the former king of the kaijus. And what's crazy is that within the new recruits, Shimiya is using I forgot which number it was, but she had the axe, and now someone she's been training next to is gonna be using the same kaiju weapon that killed her mom. It's really connected in a sort of way.
Yeah, there's a lot of full circle moments about to happen for sure, and I agree with you, Aniki. I think the thing that lured me in about Kaiju at the very initial stages was a very unique premise on a very traditional story. I've always felt that that's kind of been the undertone of the series. You have a shonen series where the story is being guided by someone who isn't a shonen, but the story is very much so a shonen story. We get these powers, but there's like an appropriate scaling, but then they break the scaling. But there's something in place that kind of keeps the world constantly grounded in a reality that is, while almost dystopian, still feels like it could be something that could be happening right now.
Yeah, I like that. It feels dystopian when the kaiju pull up, because it's like everybody's immediately in shelters, and you're like, man, they live in this dark world where but then like they start talking about the kaiju attack timings and stuff, and it's like, well, I guess it's not too bad if you live more inland or something like that, and you're kind of like, well, but at the same time, Japan's an archipelago, so like when you think about it from that angle, it's like, since it's a bunch of interconnected islands, is there really anywhere inland that you're actually feeling like, yeah, I don't have to worry about kaiju? So I think that it does a good job of like being that standard kaiju thing while letting us know that, like, since we're focusing on adults, we can get some of the more shonen stuff, like in his relationship and like chasing after his old friend, and they're like bickering and the rivalry we see between like the captain and the vice captain. But ultimately, like, the way that they're going to conduct themselves and move about in the world is still going to be more centered around making more rational, level-headed decisions, and people struggling with these complex, or actually like tackling these angles from an adult angle, like not as a shade to Black Clover, because this is actually one of the things that I liked about it, is like during the Elf War arc, or the reincarnation arc, whatever you want to call it, Asta pretty much goes, look, I just want to stop the leader who's causing the war, but I'm going to be honest and admit that I'm not the kind of guy who's like smart enough to figure out a solution to all the past prejudices and all this other stuff. But I can help defeat the bad guys to create a temporary peace to allow somebody who's smart enough to figure out those answers.
They are also using the same power of the kaiju that incited fear amongst the people who've lived during that time when he was doing the attack. So it's like, yeah, we know how powerful it is. it's like it's savage for one. Like it has so much power, and now we're using that same fear and power of a giant kaiju as our weapon against a new future threat that can be much worse than kaiju number 6. Honestly, it's cool. The person that's gonna be training our boy Ichikawa is a lookalike from Bleach's first captain, Shunsei.
Oh, Shunsui Kyoraku.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like the whole the beard and goatee, the laxness of drinking in meetings and like stuff like that.
My guy, just missing the kimono.
Hey, his Bankai was actually something else. I enjoyed.
It's definitely one of my cosplays that I would like to do.
I mean, he's lax, but he's very like knowledgeable. He's also really focused. He's also told him like, this is a powerful weapon. You may be the only compatible user that we ever had to today.
Yeah, he's like, I'm down for the cause, but like, I'm gonna give you fair warning. Like you like, if you're about this, oh, you're not gonna back down. Okay, cool. Just know I'm gonna use you like the tool that you are. Like that's all it. That's all it boiled down to. As long as you understand, as long as I did my part to give you just explanation, I'm gonna use you the way that I intend, or the way that the fleet intends for me to use you, essentially.
I think I actually like how he's like he gives him this full warning, even though he doesn't seem like he has any sympathy or care. Like half these people who actually tried this died in person, and how you're gonna like be one with the kaiju. That was actually very interesting. The moment he was hooked up into it, you front face, you see kaiju number 6, like Godzilla in front of your face in that sort of situation, and I think that was cool. It's like if you want to use this weapon, you gotta literally like face the same kaiju in your mind, kind of thing, with the same intensity, same killing instinct, like a whole another animal inside you.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's funny because of the whole like the comparison factor of like, hey, this is what my boy's been dealing with, but really there's nothing. It's nothing like anyone's ever dealt with. I don't think besides maybe the former head, Mr. Shinomiya, I don't think anybody else has dealt with the ferocity of what that is. I don't think oh Lord, what's his name? Our protagonist,
Kafka.
I don't think Kafka has that same semblance. Besides the moment where he was like almost taken over, that was the thing that happened like later on in his process of being a kaiju, if you know what I mean. Like it's not something that he had to face up front with the powers. So I think it's very, very much so a unique experience for him, but it's gonna be fun to see the adjustment of like, hey, I can do this too. I can be elite. I have the talent and the potential for this, because we always knew he had the potential, right? It's just that someone else who already had a bigger wealth of potential showed up on our screen, essentially. So we're gonna have our big 3 essentially take the stage very, very soon, and it's gonna be a beautiful thing.
If anything, he could have also referenced like the other captains that was using the number weapons.
Yeah, but he has no depth of connection to them. His whole thing at this point is he's been separated, much like we have seen physically with the chapters. He's been separated from his guy for a long time. He's not been worthy of fighting on the same field as the guy that he basically has the most respect for outside of the captains. The person that's supposed to be his rival, essentially.
Yeah, like that. And because they kind of have like a mix of Saitama and Genos' relationship and like just classic friends. So it's like this idea that he's like, yo, if I have this chance to be on this level with this dude that I came into the academy with. Because the other thing is like, it's similar to how Kafka ends up feeling about his childhood friend, where he ended up doing cleaning while she was actually out here, doing all this other stuff. And he was sitting there like, man, I've been really left behind. I need to get back to that level, get to that stage, get to that environment. And then that's the same place where Reno was, except you could argue it's better or worse. I guess it's a matter of perspective in that regard, where he's like, I am even closer within reach, and I'm still being left so far behind.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got into the military, and then I was just completely outlapped, and he's just off doing these other things, and I was supposed to be like there for him, riding it out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But yeah, he gets a 1 month trial period to keep working with number 6 as a weapon. At least he's not dead, like within like the other candidates. Um, but like the captain is not wrong. Like if he's able to take number 6 and put it into the front line, it's like it's gonna be savage. It will be a pretty deadly fight, especially when number 9's base is within the cracks, the in between the faults of the Earth's ocean, where like humans can't get to. So like he doesn't have to worry about the base getting attacked.
Yeah, the other thing we know is that the conscious of these entities that are kaiju are not dead entirely. They're suppressed. They're not able to function at critical mass, but they're not dead by any stretch of the imagination.
There's clearly like a vestige, so to speak, left in there that is like has like a form of consciousness to it.
So if he can tap into that as an information resource as well, that's like a whole next level as well. So I'm expecting we get a kind of a flash forward in the next chapter. Kaiju number 8 is really good about doing that. Like it casually, a year will casually pass because you don't realize you skip forward 3 weeks here, you skip forward 2 months here. So I'm sure we're gonna get like a little mini skip forward here, and probably in the next chapter. So
I mean, I think
they tend to talk about how kaiju attacks happen frequently, but like frequently tends to mean like once a week or something like that, more than every single day or like one every couple of hours. There's usually like a more coordinated militaristic approach to it, and that's one of the things they've been talking about, is that while there's been an uptick, what's actually been more alarming is that this high rate is combined with an intelligence to the way that they're executed. And that's why, like when they said they were in the Marianas Trench, one of my first thoughts was kind of like, oh yeah, only like 5% of the ocean is supposed to have been explored, and like scientists basically say they know more about the ocean than they know about, or more about space than they know about the ocean.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, yeah, fair game. Just put them somewhere deep in the ocean, like, and it makes sense for them to not, crack under that pressure due to circumstances.
But yeah, so far we'll see more with Ichikawa. He has 1 month. He's only equipped to his arms. I think they're gonna have to give him the full bodysuit, just like.
I don't think he's gonna get the full thing under control.
Not the full thing, but like I think how the final form would be like him wearing a full suit, like the.
He's eventually gonna have to be fully suited up.
I mean, like, they talk about his potential in a way that it is possible that he might actually have this thing mastered in a month. But I think it'd be a little bit more practical for him to be like maybe 70% to 75% capacity of like the gear is, as far as like the gear is concerned.
The way I look at it is, I'm expecting him to have full mastery of like the arms. And then I could see him having like one
the whole Deku percentage, just 5%, 10%, and then slowly move up.
Like percentages of his suit. So like maybe an eye for a reticle, and then like both arms, and then maybe something like along his spine, and so that way he can like still be a gunner.
much similar. I'm thinking arms, torso, and then the eyes probably a good point as well. Some type of added sense of the eyes, or even maybe the ears or something that's just like adding to that value factor. But I think because that's kind of like the method that they use, I think he's gonna operate probably, like I said, around 70%. Probably is gonna be like the cap out, because they're not gonna let him, even if he could operate at 100, they're not gonna let him operate at 100. So I'm gonna guess that he can probably master about 70. They're probably going to tap him out to some reasonable numbers, so say 60-65%, to keep him within like tolerance range for a duration of time. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. There's definitely some mechanisms in place that give an idea, but I love that this series doesn't necessarily hold its ground to giving everyone the same rules. Everyone's allowed to have their uniqueness. Everyone that they put on the screen that's unique is unique for a reason. So even the other classmate who they're showing, I'm sure he's gonna have a role that's gonna play a factor because they've been showing him alongside as well, and he was also part of like that big five from that first group. So
yeah, because he was at like pulling up with 35% values on his suit or something like that.
Yeah, he had tapped out is what was happening. He was like top of the class, and then he like peaked and he couldn't get past that certain point for a little bit. So
it's interesting, all of it. It's just like I
And I
can't
like-
wait to see what's to come.
I like how you mentioned how everybody's unique in their own way. Like Vice Captain Hoshina getting that extra kaiju weapon isn't because, of like necessarily how he tests, but it was because of how he fights. And he like the kaiju was like, bro, you was throwing hands. Everybody else be trying to just air us out. You threw hands.
I respect that.
Let me see what you're trying to do. Like, let's go fight let's go fight right now. Let's go run somebody pockets. I got you.
That actually brings up the rule thing that Kendall brought up, where like everybody have different circumstances. At least Vice Captain will still have number 10's consciousness, and like have more of a control thing. About Ichikawa, he's gonna have to maintain a beast. Kafka,
so yeah, it's like I think it's like Naruto and Kurama.
Like the tail beast.
So like it's gonna be the more willing the kaiju is affects the propensity for its use. So it's like, oh yeah, you can get this crazy power from Kurama just because it's inside of you, but you can get even more crazy power if Kurama willingly lets you use this energy. If Kurama is helping you with using this energy, I think that's kind of what the premise has been thus far. And I think even for the former, it's hard to say because they were both like irrelevant. The Mr. Shinoya, I think like he didn't even have that relationship. And I think if he had that relationship, he would have been crazy stronger.
I
and
feel
that's
like
that was kind of like the cap that they intentionally put there, because I think like if he had that bond, I don't think anything would have stopped them from winning that fight.
Like this whole thing is for us to like see how crazy powerful he was and understand that, in my opinion, that these dudes are going to surpass him.
Didn't he do this? Isn't he in the same line within the Reno with Ichikawa in a sort of way? Because he had number 2, and now like Reno is having number 6. They're both in the same similar way of you're not really communicating with the kaiju beast from within. You're just using its power.
Right, but the consciousness, at least for number 2, is present. The consciousness for Kafka's kaiju is becoming more present. So
which
again, I think the idea of the presence of the kaiju being a factor in the temperament and the power potential that's brought out, I think is going to be interesting. And then I think later on, I think our girl's going to have to get some type of inclination to a kaiju as well to be beyond that next level.
I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't, specifically from the standpoint of I feel like a lot of the guys are going to end up being like monsterized, but I think with her, because her mom was a warrior who I don't think had to sync up the way that like these people did, or maybe it'll turn out that her mom
that's
was.
true. The other greatest female person also does not use any of the kaiju cores. She's just stupid, crazy strong.
But then she did end up dying, like because she tried to solo everything. I think this is the.
But the Kafka's childhood friend, she also is she was, I guess, in your light, Aniki, she's probably gonna get a weapon that's like beyond what any other weapon that has ever existed yet so far.
Because she only used 99% or 98% of her full suit.
And she'll be able to like she'll start overclocking suits more than likely, and they'll have to upgrade. I can see her
upper tier of suits will be created, kind of thing.
Yeah, like I could see her being the reason that they end up having to make better suits and stuff like that, and then that'll be how they get her up there without it. So like she'll be the thing that progresses like human power forward. That's what I kind of.
That makes sense. I like that. I like that dynamic.
Yeah.
I like that dynamic. I also like that. I like that it's also the women. So like, because I feel like that also takes away from you. I feel like what happens a lot of times when monsterify women or female characters is that they try to make it look sexy instead of like letting it be the power. So that also allows them to steer clear away from that kind of dynamic where you're not unnecessarily adding sex appeal to a series that isn't necessarily screaming or calling for that type of fan service to be present.
Like that isn't like, I know some people are like, well, what's wrong with it's like we're not saying it's bad, but it doesn't enhance. It's not going to enhance the series.
The way that the series is presenting itself, that doesn't align with the way that the series is currently presenting itself. Doesn't say that it can't happen, but I think that it's a good nod, like you said, because it would keep them away from having to do that.
And so, to me, it's just like a good way to focus on what's actually important. Keep going. Ooh.
Yeah, I think we also kind of want to know, like, we also want to know, like, what happens after the fact, because if the world became kaiju free, now we're talking way later on in the series type thing, if the world ends up being kaiju free, how do people function normally? You know what I mean? Is like still a question. So it's like, you know, potentially all of our guys that are using these kaijus as some form of weaponization, their life expectancy is declining.
Yeah. Their life expectancy is dropping, and I'd say that it creates a dynamic where they kind of have to worry about now, like, what are the humans, like humans who, or like the people who have those technologies utilizing that in different ways now in human on human combat, which I guess then you just end up with the mecha series. So
exactly.
Pacific Rim. But yeah, I think I'm good with the Kaiju number 8 talk. Should we? You got any last words?
Nah, we got that. We did that.
Cool. We'll go straight into Undead Unluck.
Yeah. So like, this is so fun. I'm really loving our current antagonist more and more. The more that I see him in the panels. I'm loving that. Yes, I'm loving Unruin. I'm loving not not the
negator, but
Unruin. Sorry, so many new people recently, but yeah, I'm loving that because he's also just like, oh, you sleeping on Andy, you're making the same mistake. You know what I mean? You're making the same mistake. And I spoke about it last time about the fact that I think that there's a dynamic of like, hey, we're both relevant for the next steps of what's supposed to happen. And this chapter completely cleared that whole exact point that I was making. The negator, the human side, the rules, they both have their role that they have to play. And much like I was alluding to, for this kind of presenting or pathway for God to present itself. And then we also got the intention. We finally really got the intention of our antagonist in, hey, my goal is to eliminate them from the next loop.
Yeah.
You guys keep playing this game. I'm actually going to just take them out of the loop altogether because the loop's going to happen regardless. God's going to come. We're going to reset everything. But if we stop them from being a factor, then we don't have to worry about, at least not to this extent, have to worry about it. Because I'm sure over time, a set of other negators would probably start that same process of trying to like overthrow God.
Yep.
But I feel like what we get here is, again, we get the intentions of our antagonist, our current main antagonist. We see that there's a certain respect for the protagonist, which I like. I always like when our antagonist is not sleeping on our protagonist. And our antagonist is like, I dusted him around pretty easy, but like recognized game, like Andy's still the truth and you kind of slacking. And then the other thing that we got from this chapter was also kind of like explaining the whole rule of ghosts and seeing how rules can amplify, change, adjust, and even magnify the ability of any of the other negators skills. So ghost and the concept, because we already had that point of like the limit of your powers and your rules and your ability to even manipulate or break the rules is in your head. And then we took that and said, oh, a new rule plus your power to be creative and imaginative has now given you the potential to basically awaken, so to speak, your deeper level of your ability. So I think again, that's a lot of the same stuff that we talked about last week. We're seeing the validation here in this chapter, a very solid page turn for Undead Unluck, and it's something that they do really well. It's not just cliffhangers, it's just very smooth transitions chapter to chapter. And this was just another smooth transition as we kind of build up to, hey, what is the next steps? Undead Unluck is constantly giving us like the next steps, and I really appreciate that because I don't have to question it. And that's what makes it so much more refreshing of a read for me, because it's like I don't have to wait long for an answer. Like, yes, there's like an over goal that I'm looking for, you know, but I don't have to wait long for the immediate of like, hey, what are we doing? It's not hiding it from me. It's not any trickery. Again, I like that with some series, but I also find it refreshing that Undead Unluck is not that way.
Undead Unluck doesn't feel like it has any padding. Like there's no arcs that I feel like, oh yeah, we should have just trimmed that down. Like there's value in all of it to me. Because like the way I look at it is what this rebellion of Uma that we get this chapter with them becoming ghosts and popping out and all this other stuff. When you look at, it's like everything about the Uma Spring arc and the battle with Spring was building towards that idea, like the Uma having their own will, being forced into it. And if you think about like even before that, when you had the fight between Spoil and Fire or Magma or whatever, where they were like, oh, concept types are always looking down on other people and blah, 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 blah. It's like, we got this hierarchy, this idea that Umas have their own will, thoughts, and ideas. And even like, I'm the king of Umas, king of negators, blah, blah, blah. Like these like goals being attached. So it's like, we've been building up towards Umas having their own individuality for a while. And now with them being like trapped and treated like this by Seal, they have a motive to rebel against God by rebelling against Seal in this fashion. So, and
then the same thing, even the season before Spring, was that fall? Was that autumn? Was before Spring?
It was
where
autumn.
Andy went back in his mind. He went back in his mind, and again, the idea of that soul, and Andy even says it. He's like, bruh, it took me centuries to figure out what you figured out in like 10 years, 6 years of life. Like you've mastered this thing that I have basically been pushed to the brink of death just to figure out. So again, like you said, it's the full looping, it's the not trying to pull something over me, even going all the way back to the first Uma, again talking about the difference of the concept types and everything. Like it's all the structure and the sequence is relevant, and the most that you get that may feel like fluff is always contained within a page or two. It's like the fluff is Andy really couldn't, like we're watching Andy, like Andy, you really couldn't think of something, you couldn't think of something. But like it was like, no, like Andy, the personality of Andy is again has to show itself. Andy truly has lived so long, he doesn't know how to process certain things emotionally. This is something that you see as a reoccurring theme with Andy constantly, and you're like, oh man, bro, what do you mean? Like you have someone that you care about that you're trying to save, you have a end goal that you're trying to meet, but it's like for him, it's like, what are you talking about? I've done everything in life, bro. I've been a mafia boss, I've been the lead singer of my band, I've run a bank, like, you know, I've done all the things.
Cosmetologist,
exactly, like, you know, like I've owned my own hair salon. Like, what do you want from me, bro?
And one of the things that I liked about this is that it was Andy going back to that like 1865 time period or whatever.
Yes.
And building off of there and having them grow and age and live together. And having a version of Shen that he met at like drinking buddy age and meeting like Chikara and like them like having Chikara, it seems like as his son, and then like them bringing in a grandkid, you know. And Fuko dying before him mostly because he just expects to outlive everyone.
Right.
But still getting the age is
but he can't age, right? Like
that's
the point.
Old.
Yeah, that's the point.
Dream.
He got the dream of wanting to truly live a life to its end. not just die. Like it's so like we've always seen it as he just wants to die, but he's like, no, I want the ability to die so that I can live a full life true to its actual fullest with a family. Like that's the thing, right? Like he wants the family, he wants the friend. Like I don't want the connections that I have to slip away over decades of time and have no value, over centuries of time and have no value. I really want to cherish these people and these moments and these things. And I was really appreciative of, like I said,
the
even
curse
calling back
of
to
immortality really takes a toll
exactly.
on you.
And we've always, even in quick shout to Ranking of Kings, Okon, he lost his mind because he couldn't die. Like it's something about having that immortality that does something to your mind over a period of time. At least the concept that we understand, that's the way that it's perceived. And I think it's true. I think if anyone had that much time to do as many things as they possibly can, you eventually reach a point where it's like, well, what else do you want me to try?
It's God's way of endless, like, undoing, endless loop. Keep all your memories, even beyond his undead abilities. It's like he's lived multiple lives, and he has multiple personalities.
Which that's the other thing, is that I kind of want to know more. Sorry, I've been taking this eating break. My girl brought me Shake Shack.
No, go for it.
No
problem. That's good.
Oh yeah, Shake Shack.
All I got are some oniguris.
But this, like them being like the final loop, like the next loop would be the final loop. One, it makes me go, okay, we want to get there. But two, you remember like Juiz was like, I'm giving you these points, and there's like somebody on the moon, and it had been tweeted about. I've seen people talk about this for a while now. It is very the sun, like no, the sun is clearly the source of God where God lives.
They've been alluding to that.
Which, like, this chapter basically was like, no, like, period, this is it. They're like, before God makes their arrival, and it's just boom, right here, say it right over their sun, the chest tattoo. Like, it's right here. So it's like, and they all, and usher in God, it's the sun that's being shown. So it's very clear that, like, they're like, no, God is in the sun. And I'm guessing if you are alive when the world, like, ends on a loop, you get to be reincarnated. So I guess that's partially how they're making it through. They're just not having memories, but now that they'll know how to get them faster. And then you remember they talked about Juiz working on anti-aging technology and all this other stuff. So so he has to kill them before the next loop, because I'm guessing that the King of Negators doesn't come into play until like they get to that point, like the 100 challenge. Just like Uma Ghost, when it was first produced as a reward, didn't seem that big of a deal, but it was because of that reward that we managed to have this arc and potentially find a way to actually beat Uma Seal here, or whatever you want to call Seal, Regulator Seal.
I would also say, like, you can also use Uma Ghost as a way to fight God in itself. You don't need to use your physical bodies to fight in this sort of way. You can use your own soul, your ghost self, because we know your negator abilities work through your soul and your ghost and that sort of stuff. And, like, that should be a pretty good way to, like, fight something that's like further distance or like in another plane, another world kind of thing. And how I'm seeing Unruin, they're calling him the King of Negators because he has to be the one to level up the playing field between the Negators and the Umas. And that's his entire purpose is to kill humans, Negators or not, or anything like that, so that he balance out with the number of Umas. Because that's what he says, like, one side must be judged, which he wants from the humans, and the other is to be enhanced, which is the Umas. And what Andy was doing this entire time in the beginning by killing Umas left and right, even though it's destroying like rules of the world, is actually benefiting the humans in a sort of way. It's just they don't see it yet, because I guess it's like, well, Unruin is trying to balance out the humans and Uma, or at least have the Umas go up top below the humans, so that way God will reward the Umas and he'll punish the humans. Well, it is the other way around that kind of like loses like the balance, loses the change of way. There'll be more negators, or they're just like negators are rewarded and the Umas are like punished.
I'll also point out that like one of the things we saw happen in real time is like when Andy killed the Uma for thirst, like Lucy immediately lost the ability to like die of dehydration or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like everybody who like is in danger of dying from dehydration because the world is getting closer to the sun is no longer in danger of that.
Mm-hmm.
They can still die from heat and all that other stuff. But if those other rule Uma were to be killed, then in theory, every single rule would have been removed, and therefore it would be harder for them to kill or take on anybody else, including the rule of death.
Yeah, so the rules, if you think of the rules of being limits, or even we'll use Rock Lee from Naruto. If you think of them as being gates, basically every time a key rule disappears, as soon as we perpetually get closer to the sun, right? Perpetually getting air quotes closer to God, right? Now we understand that again, Ghost's rule enhanced and basically enhanced on health or whatever. Kind of like you pointed out, dehydration being gone. Okay, well, you can't die from dehydration. Okay, if we get rid of some other rule that would potentially get rid of a clause that could put you closer to death's door. Again, you're unlocking greater potential for the humans essentially every time one of the rules disappear, which is the unbalance that we're kind of talking about here. And then ultimately, I think the king of negators, like I said earlier, is just like it's a function, right? So it's a function to kind of put in checks and balances for that half, where it's like you rule over these people, you rule over these entities or creatures. So I think both have to have their place. The antagonist's side is trying to restore balance, right? So I think we're talking about JJK Zero, who's talking about like the whole love versus justice thing, where it's like one of these isn't innately a bad thing. I don't think that the premise of our current antagonist world outside of God, right? I don't think the premise is terrible. Everyone wants there to be a certain level of balance currently. The current antagonist is like, there needs to be balance. And I am here to enforce the balance. That is the pure rule that I have. And on the other side, the humans are like, well, I don't want to die. I want to live. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm going to try my best to live. You know what I mean? So.
I actually like how, like, if you were to fully gone to grips within your own negation, because when unhealthy was established, we thought that, I mean, her negator must have been like the worst power ever to even come about.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess it's like how she was capable of using it herself, unknowing, when it came to the whole being her soul, being a ghost, being a Uma ghost and all that stuff like that. She'd be anywhere else. She can literally put her own unhealthy negation inflict onto another person. Because I don't think it's just gonna be limited to seal and like being trapped in this like that. I think it's like she can, as long as she makes contact with the person's soul, they will.
She's
feel
a self-targeting compulsory type, so I think any soul in contact with her soul is stricken with unhealth.
All right, and then that's not thinking how far they can take health to death's door.
Make God unhealthy.
The magnitude of health can be a thing. And if there's another rule that comes into place that literally puts a cap on, because again it is self-targeting, right? So like I can only make myself but so unhealthy. However, you aren't bound by the rules or of healthiness. Therefore, if I make you this healthy, you will die. That won't have an effect on me as an unhealthy, because that's as far as I can take my power. So there's a lot of implications here for the way that power can be basically stacked going forward.
And I think what this also is just a good precedent for is that we now know that none of them have to keep their bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They can all on some level fight as ghosts. And so it's a matter of, especially like in the case of Fuko, for example, you could argue that the thing that will allow her to feel affection for God, it will be knowing that, while yes, he's done all these terrible things, impose these rules, make them have to go through all this stuff. If it weren't for those adventures, they wouldn't have been able to become as close. She wouldn't have gotten out of her shell. She wouldn't have written a manga, wouldn't have met the author of her favorite manga, and all this other stuff, where it's like utilizing that and like viewing those friendships and relationships as blessings that were not possible to be achieved without God. Because especially when you look at almost every friend that she has that's super close to her, they are only close because of their status as negators. So the very restrictions and curses that were placed upon them by God are the very reason that she has the best things in her life. And if she can use that as a reason for an effect, like to build affection for God, and then come into contact with him via in ghost form, well, what is the unluckiest thing that can happen to, or what's an unlucky thing that can happen to a deity? Like, it has to be something that reaches to that level.
Everybody that came into contact with Unluck dies, like literally, like from a tragic accident and whatnot, in sort of way.
The other concept here that I think even talking about like this far in is just like, what if for someone that can create, what if the unluck is bounded by your ability to think? So I touch you, I give you unluck. Basically, you now can create whatever unluck you want on yourself. And then in that same light, another avenue for Andy to basically be able to effectively reach the point that he wants to reach in. Again, what if all of these rules, and that's what I was saying last week, same thing I was saying, Aniki, right? Like, the more we get, the more I feel like we're getting closer to a solution to Andy, like being able to die, is because you stack all of these things onto each other. And it's like, in a combined collective form, if all of these rules were to be enacted on Andy, then he can age, he can do all of these different things. So again, I think you're right, Aniki. I think this is just kind of, again, this series doesn't have fluff. It's not trying to make me guess. It is still unique. It is pushing my thoughts on the way I want to conceptualize things, but it's not taking me on a journey to think. It's just like, here, think about this. I'm going to keep moving forward, but you keep thinking about this thing while we move forward.
What I also like is that it does, what it really is like, it's like a seamless story, because it isn't so much that, like, for example, when Uma Galaxy gets added and then all the stars pop up, I don't think a lot of people put a lot of thought into, oh yeah, there's just the moon and the sun in the sky all the way back in like chapter 6 when you meet Gina. Like, I don't think people were like,
I think we assumed that it was just the nature of the art style of the series kind of thing. Like I really, like, I feel like I noticed it, but I was like, why? Again, you're a mangaka, you're already giving me all these other details. What emphasis do you need to put on the stars? But it's like, no, there was actually relevance in you not seeing it at that point in time.
And so it was like, no, literally Uma's Galaxy is added, now there's stars in the sky. And it's like, huh?
Right, wait, so there wasn't stars starring? What are you saying?
So it's like, talking about? So literally the only thing that existed in this world before Uma Galaxy was the Earth we saw and the sun in the sky and the moon in the sky. Just the Earth, sun, and moon. That was it. Oh,
yeah, I'm waiting. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm gonna call it right now as we transition. This is gonna be my final point on this. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a chapter called Big Bang in the near future.
I mean, they kept.
You're right.
They kept the bomb Uma still alive, and I forgot the other one. It was like some kind of rock and smoke. They're gonna be like, and what's interesting is none of these Umas like work together well. They keep being their own separate entities, unless otherwise, where you negotiate or you just talk to them and whatnot. They start working well together.
I don't think the negators do either. The human tendency, however, and the being the air quotes weaker of the bunch, that pack mentality, they always say the weaker have to gather together. So the Umas have always been so strong individually that they've never had to worry about that concept. But now they're kind of basically learning from the humans, essentially, of like, oh, well, I can do it this way, and we can work together in XXX, Y, and Z. So I think that's kind of what that is, at least my take on it.
What's funny about this also is that the impact this is going to have on Seal is kind of fascinating, because we don't know what the full scale of Unruin's abilities are going to be. And since all these ghosts are like popping out, one, we don't know if they're going to be able to actually make enact violence upon Unruin, but two, which we could be getting into soul damage and stuff like that being added into the series. So that's a thing. But the idea that they might have to, like, when they leave Seal might lose all their abilities, which in turn means, like, what are they going to be doing? Like, are they going to be able to destroy Seal from the inside out or outside back? Like, however you want to describe it.
Or it could be a protection. What if they never leave Seal? Seal's body is now this, like, this really powerful thing that just ends up protecting their physical bodies, but now they can astral project out of Seal, so they can use their astral bodies to, again, like you said, enact harm from that perspective. So there's definitely, again, there's a lot of propensity for new stakes to be placed and even a new rule possibly to come about because of it.
And Uma Ghost basically has to go up to this battlefield most likely, which means we have the option to save Fuko finally coming up by, like, force, her having to be there. Because they're not going to kill Ghost. So it's going to have to be something else that allows them to get Fuko back.
It seems like Seal is, like, always a new person that always underestimates everybody because they feel like they're more superior. Like, it's like those people who have, like, I've been blessed with God, he gave me this power, and I do to serve. Instead of, like, thinking for themselves, having their own thoughts and different ways to using their own powers and stuff like that. When it comes to Seal, yeah, I get to use your powers if I absorb you and that sort of stuff too. But
yeah, Seal's perspective is that of, like, I have a mission, and I'm just gonna do my mission. Like, you guys aren't fulfilling the role that you were given. I'm just gonna fulfill the role that I was given. But like you said, it leads no way for imagination. It leads no way for, like, growth in the perspective of what Seal could possibly be.
And that's because Seal is, I think the advantage and the difference that we're seeing between Unruin and Seal is that Unruin, one, seems to be a vampire/human type character.
But he's been in a continuous loop. Like, he's been living for a very long time.
Yeah, it seems like he's been here a while.
And God has given him the title of King of Negators and the powers of regulation, which, like, I guess the Negator side to, like, kill off some humans so that would bring back the balance of it in that sort of way. And Seal is the Uma balance of the other side for God in that sort of way too, to, like, help elevate the balance between the world for the sun.
Yeah, they're both sealing effectively, right? The King of Negators is sealing away the human side, and the Seal is effectively sealing away the Uma side to create some level of balance.
Because he sealed away Fuko by having Uma Ghost take her spirit and then, like, run it off with her.
And like, it seems like he can't seal the negation powers, but he can kill off humans and just have these powers go into someone else who might not even have any control with it. And that sort of stuff. So his mission's good. I mean, like, he's very built up and a great antagonist for the story. And, like, we know, like, he's probably not going to be the final boss of this entire story of of it all. Because I feel like even, like, he's just said so, quote, king of it, but...
I mean, they could be vassals. They could get taken over.
That's what I'm thinking, is that having these two close together, I could see Unruin, like, consuming Uma Seal, and then the merging of those two beings basically summoning God early. So...
the balance of it both, yeah. I could definitely see it. Having both of a Uma and, like, a negation power. What does that What does that contribute?
Because at that point, you were both negating and creating rules. So what's the difference between you and God?
And, like, it's like, because even Seal says itself, like, you negators are just beings that can, like, just, like, negate rules in these passes and that sort of stuff. And now it's just... yeah, what does that make you come God? Like, all you could do is negate them. So where do you get all? Yeah, it's just makes them a different kind of demigod, different rules.
Yeah, essentially a different kind of demigod. So
But yeah,
even in that concept, you know, the idea of gods coming down and empowering their champions and stuff like that, or empowering their vassals and stuff like that. There's a very it's not uncommon. So I would like to see that, honestly. If that's the direction that we head in, I would like to see that actually conceptualized from the author's unique perspective and take on it. But that would be a direction that I'd be a big fan of.
I think I'm good with Undead Unluck. You guys?
I do think we covered most of it.
All right, cool.
I don't really have anything else to say. So
yeah, same. So let's go straight into Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 180.
Hey, so we kind of talked about this a little before we started the stream.
You took the asshole.
Yes, because so one of the main things that we were kind of talking about is how Yuta does not intend to be an asshole. However, by nature of his skill, power, etc., he is still an asshole. Like, for example, and even when you look at the way this section of him in the Culling game started, he's like listing off like all these rules, and he's like, yeah, but I'm gonna kill all these hoes. I'm gonna rack up at least 80 bodies. Then I'm gonna go kill Kenjaku too. It's gonna be sad for these niggas, and Gojo isn't gonna have to deal with this. That's my nigga, and I refuse to let my nigga down. That's my friend. And it's like, oh, Yuta, yeah, you really said you was gonna like look out for your friend. And then it's like, wait,
he's such a manly man.
He just said he was gonna go catch 80 bodies.
He just said he's gonna kill 80 people. What? He said, y'all said something about negotiating and winning points, and that's cute or whatever, but I could just take the points. I could just have the points myself.
Like, he was like, I'm gonna just go whoop a bunch of niggas' ass. That's it. I'm gonna go whoop a bunch of ass. I'm out. Like, that was his mindset going into this colony. And like, even when you look here where it's like, Yuta was originally going to do this, and he's like, just this once, let's have a giant laser blast battle. Like, what? Man
He didn't need to do that for him. And like, this guy, I thought he was just a teenager who just suddenly developed Cursed Sorcerer. But no, you find out that he was a 400-year-old, like, Cursed Sorcerer that was in the Culling games because of Kenjaku, and he's just you kind of see that his entire point of making a contract with Kenjaku was so that he fights more. He almost had the same mentality as Sukuna, where like, I just wanted to fight more people. I just wanted to show off. I want to find a worthy opponent besides like Sukuna. Of course, he's not meeting up, gonna fight. But, you know, there's going to be other contenders. There's also going to be other players. There's also going to be other fights that I can take this in. And he never found his, like, full course meal of a fight. Because he uses, like, imagery or of, like, a full course. Like, you have the appetizer. You got the main course. You got the drinks and everything.
He's talking about how he never had any dessert throughout most of the battle.
And then when he met with Yuta, like, okay, domain expansion, all right, nice nice appetizer. And then you have Rika with the whole copying ability. It's like, okay, you have a main course, and now like, what's left?
I really like the way this part of the story was told, because again, like you're both saying, it's this idea of like, well, I haven't had my fill. I've done so, and he says it, like, I've done so much in life. I've done everything. I've really truly done everything. I just couldn't get that dessert off. I couldn't, like, I never got the dessert that needed to come with me living this full life. And I think Aniki was kind of talking about this last week, if I'm not mistaken. You were kind of alluding to the idea of like the thing that these older spirits are missing out on. And this character really exemplifies that.
How Gege described him, like, even though he's probably never going to find a meaning in fighting, his gaze had melted Yuta's, like, heart. I was like, all right, that kind of plays so well, because Yuta is all about the whole love and the curse and everything.
And think about Ishigori, though, is that he mentioned, like, he lived successfully, he had a family and everything.
The same idea, again, of, like, I've lived this life to this point. I did what I was supposed to, kind of thing.
But the thing that he never really got to do was find the maximum potential of his sorcerer abilities. He's like Dr. Jackal from the Get Backers, if you know what the Get Backers is.
Oh, okay. Not a Get Backers reference.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay.
I got 15 volumes right over there.
But Yuta the asshole just so happenly to give it. All right, I'll give it to him. I'll give him some love. Give him what he wants.
Yeah, he's like, because if you think when he was talking about Uro, even though he was like, look, don't you have friends? Don't you have a lover? Come on, like, you're not bitchless, are you? Like,
you're not bitchless. You get hoes at least, right?
So,
but that Pompatu, you would think, right?
And he's still
edit all of that.
And he was still like, yeah, I'm gonna whoop that ass. As soon as she had even like an inkling of an opening, dog was like, bop, got her arm bit off, all kind of like.
Yeah, he blasted the cockroach and her arm off and stuff like that. It's just like, no, like, you guys get the fuck out of my way. You're not supposed to be in this course. It's just supposed to be one-on-one between me and Yuta, that sort of stuff too.
And that's what we were talking about last week, of like that point of like, yeah, like this orchestrated itself. We got so caught up in the idea of this being a big group fight. And it's like, no, he really wants a one-on-one fight, and you get the one-on-one fight, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, and I think it's interesting that ultimately the dude with the most simple technique is the one who got the final one-on-one battle, because like you have all this high-tech stuff, like high-tech isn't like high skill with Euro's technique where you got to like grab the sky, manipulate it in angles and all kinds of stuff like that. But the dude that just goes pow pow, you're dead, is the one who makes it to the end, because when it's see hero, kill hero, you just shoot. So his simplistic mindset ended up carrying him through, like stayed on guard and was just ready to aim and fire whenever necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also really interested in how Yuta's copy curse technique works. Does he need to eat some kind of blood or flesh and that sort for Rika to copy it? Because like
it seems like Rika has to have contact. Rika has to have contact seems to be the premise of it.
Because like he use the cockroach's curse technique or abilities? Doesn't that mean that Rika had to make contact with it then?
I don't think he used the cockroach's ability, but I might be tripping.
I don't remember.
I don't recall which. But I think at least from what we've seen so far, the premise is Rika has to make contact. There is probably some time period that hasn't been fully disclosed to us, from the point of contact. But I think that is at least the initial premise, is that Rika has to make contact. It seems that way. It could just be the way it's been presented so far.
They did off-screen the old man from like when Yuta's arc started, where like Yuta killed him first, and like he was somehow able to use his ability against her, because like we saw Yuta's copy ability to use against her, and then use it against the cockroach in that sort of way, and now he's using her abilities against a Pompadour dude. Yuta's literally the middleman where like, all right, I kill you, use your ability, use that ability to use that person's weakness, use that person's weakness, go your weakness, and that is straight asshole move. You guys are all in the 4-way lock? No problem. Let me jump right in, do all this shit, gather all my bison points.
Everything you were worried about, I'll make it come true. Like, because like, and that's even part of why Ishigori took out Yura right away, is that it was like, okay, she's actually a threat, so, which I'm kind of hoping that Ishigori isn't dead yet, because I would like for him to give Yuta his points. Just like how, because like currently, the only, like, Megumi achieved his goal by getting all of Reggie's points, and I can't remember how many Reggie had, but he had enough. He had like, what do you have, like 30, 40? And he was like, all right, before I die, I'll give you my points.
Out of respect and last will kind of thing.
Because the sorcerer is just a con artist.
Because every sorcerer feels like, every sorcerer has like a bad ending coming to them, and I can't wait to see what yours was, so to speak.
That maniacal look when he said that, though, he was like, I can't wait to see your horrible ending, essentially.
I mean, last words, remember, like sorcerer's last words are the most like over your head, where you're gonna be thinking about these last words overhead, and there's gonna be consequences for each and every single one of them, because each of them invokes more of your motivation to keep fighting and keep going as a cursed sorcerer in that sort of way. This might be interesting. Like, how many bodies that you had to get through for cursed sorcerers that left last words to him? And this is gonna be one of the sorcerers that actually like thank you for the last meal, thank you for that last fight. I enjoyed it, even though it was my own weapon that was used against me that killed me.
That's what made him enjoy it the most, I think, is that he was like, because what it comes down to is, like, if you remember, they were like, Yuta is, the big thing about Yuta is that he has more cursed energy than Satoru Gojo.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember what they said about Ishigori?
That he can keep using it with the same output and the same high energy.
He had like the highest amount of cursed energy of any participant,
mm-hmm.
which means that Ishigori's cursed energy values were even higher than Gojo's and his. Mm-hmm. He just had like a super simple technique. And so it's kind of like the only thing the last thing he was missing was somebody whose power, somebody whose energy was like close to his own. And so he fought against Yuta, somebody who had really high cursed energy values and stuff like that, but then also got to experience a blast of his own power level. The final thing that he was missing, something that was comparable to what he was doing, which it's interesting to note that like we haven't heard anything about any descendants of Ishigori, and his cursed technique popping back up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he had
kids. Right.
So,
Yet. It's still a potential, but I think that is a relevant point, especially because we know that the Jujutsu sorcerers have done a good job of keeping track of lineage of people who have any type of connection to that world. So it's very interesting. Definitely something I also paid attention to. I'm like, so does that mean that we might have somebody currently that has that? But again, I mean, like, it could just be something, you know. These are the funny little quirks that, like, let's say there was a JJK spinoff later on and that protagonist had that ability. It'd be like a callback to that moment type of thing. So you never know where that's going to pop up. And I love that. I love that for JJK.
Yeah, Ishigori does definitely have that kind of curse, almost exceeded curse energy, because one punch onto Rika and, like, her manifestation just broke up, even though, like, there was a 5-minute limit. He just punched her once and like done.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Okay, wait. So one of the things that I want to point out though is that if you remember, there were like 5 minutes. The connection between Rika and Okotsu would end, and if you notice, she's got a white body as she goes in for the punch, and then she goes ! Blackness. So then it was just the arms and the head, and that's why they emphasized that, like, even if she was fully manifested, this would have folded her.
Yeah.
But she wasn't fully manifested, which I think actually might have saved her.
Because I don't know. Yuta said that I couldn't go full energy blast when it came to that, like, the last shot duel.
I think that was calculated. So that was my understanding. My understanding was that the premise of Yuka being dispelled, again, with Yuka being a condition for using the copy, let's just call it copy, I think had that been fully dismantled in that moment, the sequence of events that we saw would not have happened. And I think even still, Yuta was still able to execute a plan that allowed for him to basically utilize the best of what was there.
He played them so well.
Before the 5-minute mark. He was already like, I only have 5 minutes anyway, so I'm already executing basically, like, I have no time left. And I think that's what you end up seeing there as well.
Because like when you look at it, it goes, like, if you just look at the combat sequence, it's like uppercut to throw it up, and like you can even see it, and then he like pulls the sky a bit, and then he does that thin icebreaker.
Yep.
And then you immediately get the hammered blow down on his head. And then that's when
it's a position lock. It's a position adjust and
push him into that right moment of where the trajectory was gonna hit.
And then just to make sure that you don't do anything, he does the
he hold on to him and usually use all the pressure to like literally ground him on that floor.
Yeah, that was what I heard was check me, bitch. that's what I heard.
Because it's like when he was encased in cursed energy and landed in front of Yuji, and Yuji was like, "Yo, what?" Same thing right here. He just knuckles down, pulls him. And then he's like, "Wait, what?"
He thought that he'd have more hand-to-hand combat fight, but he thought it was like, "Wait, what are you doing?" Kind of hold his shirt. I was like, "Boom! You're staying right here in this exact same position," and then the whole sparkle, and then boom, literally within like millimeters between Yuta's face, and just direct hit with it.
Right crazy. On top of his head, like
lost his pompature and everything.
Right and just, wow.
Also, like the resilience too, like with that punch from the top, like he didn't really move from that. Like he was hurt. He was impacted. You know what I mean? But like the sturdiness of the character's body was unfazed essentially by that great of an impact, because we know that was an impact. Like we know that was an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like you can see because he's even bleeding from his forehead when he goes into swing and like punch the Rika away. Mm-hmm. So then
never lost focus on like I'm about to strike you, Rika. Like whatever is going on here, like I'm about to rock your
And then that's why, like, when you get to the hand-to-hand combat phase, and he's just like up close and personal. Even the fighting stance that like Yuta was using is one for like super close hand-to-hand. Mm-hmm. And then he's just like, "All right, cool. I'll catch you in this exact spot I needed you to be in long enough." Wow. And that's why even the pose at the end with the smile, like we were talking about, it's like, come on, bro. You looking way too smug about this. You didn't have like. It was all one big game after a while for him, just to make sure that he gave that dude what he wanted, had his fun, and then racked up his points.
Yeah, and the selfishness of it. He like Yuta enjoyed this. Don't take that away from the fact of like we see a very cold Yuta at the beginning of this portion where it's like I have a mission to do, but there's this satisfaction in the fight of like again, Yuta isn't the one that would enjoy a fight, but like this fight. No, this moment was enjoyed by both parties involved, you know, essentially as it boiled down to the final two entities.
So we know... basically... So go for it.
Because you remember they were like, he's second only to Satoru Gojo in strange abilities.
Mm-hmm. They're both special class sorcerers. And there's technically 3 now. Only 3.
Well, my assumption is that some of these guys were special grades.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. Over time, they've just been fewer numbers, but they're never fully established. And the grading system within the Jujutsu Kaisen world is how do you classify special curse technique grade 1, grade 2?
Right. Because when you get even in, like early in the series, like okay, so this is one of those things that like I love and hate it, because I loved in the beginning when Jujutsu Kaisen was like a 4th grade spirit, you could probably like beat it with a baseball bat. 3rd grade, you probably need a pistol. 2nd grade, you need a shotgun. 1st grade, this would be like you probably need a tank. Special grade, good luck. Maybe a carpet bombing would be enough.
Yeah.
Like I was like, all right, so that's what you're working with.
Yeah. It's very Yu Yu Hakusho reminiscent. I think I said that last week that this series always gave me a very big nod to Yu Yu Hakusho, because I feel like it's that same thing. Like you go through most of the series and you have like this idea, and then it's like, oh yeah, there's S tier. Also, there's like gods of the demon world. You know, so it's like there's like that there's this upper limit, but even the upper limit has no upper limit kind of thing.
And so then when you get to the special grades, but by the time you meet Jogo, they're like, oh yeah, this is a special grade. And like Yuji's like, but he's way stronger
I think they did establish that there's like 4 special grade curse sorcerers, but there was like 16 other curses. like special grade
No,
curses?
for curses, it's 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and special grade. And then special grade is basically all we've been fighting since like chapter 20.
Right, but there's been other types. So like there's like, the curse eggs and the other different things. Like there's other types, but they still fall into that same ranking, like Aniki kind of mentioned there.
Because I remember like Geto says himself, there was like 4 established curse sorcerers during that time in like 2017 of Christmas Eve.
Oh yeah,
there was like 16 other cursors, and this is one of them. And he brought some kind of
there's these special curses that, like I said, from the eggs, from like whatever, like they kind of talk about them.
They said there were 3 registered
the four
special grade curse
users. The 4 brothers of the curses. There's the 4 brothers, the paintings, and then there was like 3 eggs. So there's these other things that are also of special grade class, essentially.
16 officially registered special grades with which I think includes like some of the cursed wounds and the other stuff. So like officially registered, but then anything else could show up and be special grade. Like Mahito was not a registered special grade spirit.
Right.
Neither was
I don't even think Mahito was special grade initially. And then you got also, so you've been thinking about the rankings. When Jugo shows up, it's like, how many fingers of Sukuna do you think I am worthy of? Like what are you equivalent, or what are you equivalent to? And then it's like again this premise of not having a proper scaling for the upper tier, right? Because it's like you're 7, which sounds impressive, but you're no match for Gojo. You're not even close to being a match for Gojo.
So and even Gojo said like, if Sukuna was in his full form, I win. It's like, even tells you now, like, all right, that might not be as far-fetched as we thought.
Yeah, he wasn't just being cocky at the beginning. He was like, I'm pretty confident I will win that fight.
I am the strongest. I am Gojo Satoru. Or are you Satoru because you're the strongest?
Is that Sukuna versus Jogo? Do you guys feel like Sukuna was giving Jogo a lot of like leeway that whole fight?
A lot of it,
or do you feel it? Okay. Because I was gonna say, depending on your perspective of that fight, determines how you should feel about Gojo saying he would beat Sukuna. Because if you feel like Jogo was legitimately somewhat putting up a fight using maximum techniques and stuff like that,
I think even Sukuna knows. that they can't beat Gojo. I think Sukuna more than anybody understood that, which is why Sukuna's like, I'll back fiddle.
Even Kenjaku,
when I get these 20 fingers, I'm gonna come see this ninja Gojo.
He'd be the first person I want to kill.
I'm coming to you as soon as I got all 20 fingers.
And like Kenjaku, he even said himself, even if you all work together, you would all it would be all in vain for you to even fight Gojo. Like all of Haname, Jogo, the squid thing.
And honestly, I'm gonna say they're just lucky that he can't do purple on a small scale.
Right.
Because as far as we know.
Well, because like the reason why I say this, because while they were fighting, he could have just been like, "Oh, as I'm punching you, purple punch," and then just.
But I think he doesn't have to. It's not that he can't. I think he just doesn't have a reason to do it yet.
It's more of a the reason why I think he can't is because he didn't want the civilians getting killed. So I don't think he would have held back on like utilizing like small red glows and stuff if he could just simply blast them away with like close range.
Yeah, no, I don't think he has the skill.
Even if
I don't think he has the skill currently, is what I'm saying. I don't think it's impossible for him to have that skill set. I
can even say like even like a small red, the impact would have been too strong. Where like the impact and residue would have been like too.
Yeah, but I mean, imagine if he did a red, use blue to offset it, then he can encapsulate everything inside of his domain anyways and control that impact. So again, we talked about that last week, like how the domains can be the scaling of the domains. We kind of got that emphasis last week that the scaling of what you want to make your domain is actually controllable. So if he sequenced all of his max potential of his abilities, it could be possible. It could take a lot, but he has a lot to give to begin with. and the ability to regenerate it really quickly. It could just be a matter of sequencing. Here's red, here's blue. I do this. This gives you purple. Again, maybe encapsulated into a physical touch.
There
and then
is
in that moment, only expand your domain to encapsulate, let's say, 3 meters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then all of that is contained in time in a specific space. So it's just like I think there's room for it. I just think that Gojo's already broken.
I feel like Gojo just doesn't want to learn the new abilities and stuff. You have to kind of force him. You have to literally put him in a corner for him to learn by himself, and that's what Toji brought him into. Because
he's probably gonna come out being able to do a lot of shit after being in that little solidarity.
Because even Sukuna knows some stuff that Gojo might not even know about. Because we only thought that Sukuna was all about the hack and slashing like curse technique. No, he's able to use fire. He's able to use. He's the king of curses.
Everything.
He knows how everything works.
Literally the king of curses. I can use anything, any element. He's Gojo. He's Gojo curse form. Mm-hmm. Or maybe Yuta might be a better comparison since Yuta has
So
copy.
what's funny is that I was in a group chat for manga and stuff, and I actually said when Yuta's domain is revealed to be eerily similar to Sukuna's. Just because to me it would make sense if part of the revelation behind Sukuna being able to do what he can do is that he had a previous version of copy, and within that version, that's why he ended up being the guy with 2 faces and 4 arms and stuff, because his physical body was like hosting what the Rika body would have been, you know?
I already have my suspicions that Itadori is also related to Gojo and Yuta, so I'm waiting for that to eventually be revealed.
I mean, he's already the villain's baby.
Yeah, he is.
We'll see what gets revealed. We'll see what gets revealed.
Like, there's a lot when it comes to JJK lore, and it's all very interesting. It's all well invested in. Like, Gege knows how to write this. He's taking his break next week. He'll return in 2 weeks.
Good. I not failed to impress me after coming back from a break, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
I could tell, like, it's not a full confirmed kill unless the points are added up in that sort of way. Mm-hmm. We know the Sky Girl is still technically alive, and she knows reverse curse technique because her arm got ripped off, and you can bring it back with reverse curse technique. It's just that it's going to take a very long time or a very limitless ability that only maybe Yuta knows how to do because of his own, like, limitless curse technique in that sort of way, but he's pretty worn down himself.
I still don't think he does that worn down, bro. I ain't gonna hold you, no cap.
I mean, his copy curse technique is refilled, and that's how he was able to use.
I don't think we saw 50% of Yuta's powers just now.
My stance on Yuta is that, like, because he has so much, he can just constantly eventually use reverse curse technique to restock himself. So I feel like now that the fight's over, he'll probably chop it up with Ishigori for a couple more pages. Go check on Euro because it feels like the kind of thing his character would do.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like although like there's so much like a whole like unlimited potential in that sort of way, I do understand what Ichiro is saying there. Like there must be some kind of major conditions for this. So like when did he like satisfy these conditions? Like it can't be always limitless because I don't think Gege would ever do that for every character for one character or anything to like no restrictions, no drawbacks, no like like there needs to be like a condition or limitless abilities of Yuta himself.
I guess the way I look at it is that Gojo's real ability, like the limit of Gojo's ability was that if you remember they were like we would need him to stand in one place for like 5 minutes, and then it was like no, it just needs to be 5 minutes inside of Gojo's brain. It's like you have to have stuff like that allows you to exploit his weaknesses. Or like how Miguel had like that braid or whatever that was important and and lets you negate curse techniques and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I can see why you would need it or it would be useful to have like a restriction on Yuta, but at the same time it kind of feels like once you like the whole point of mastering reverse curse technique and all this other stuff is so that you can more or less eventually circumvent any downsides to your curse technique. Because if Yuta figured out how to do the same thing as like Gojo does with the reverse curse technique, keeping himself permanently fresh and stuff like that, then I don't see why he would have to have a restriction over time, especially because if he, as he was doing it, it would just build up more and more, where while Kenjaku might have said he can't be the next Satoru Gojo, I see no reason why he can't eventually copy other abilities like Gojo's as he gets stronger and stronger, which would inevitably allow him to be more than the next Gojo. And I would say that him having the same curse technique or same curse technique origin as Sukuna would make a lot of sense if you looked at it as it was like the death of Sukuna, because like the death of Sukuna led to the birth of that curse specifically.
The copy curse.
But or
the
like,
thing
you
is
know,
to
like
remember
the
that
curse version.
remember that Gojo's abilities are essentially 2 abilities. So I think the condition clearing for ultimately using like the full propensity of that may be if there's an activation sequence that's necessary, that may be why that's a little bit out of Yuta's wheelhouse essentially. Like you need to have the eyes as well as have the legacy, as well as have the bloodline, as well as have the mana read. Like there's actually like multiple conditions to be able to do it the way that Gojo does it. Comparatively, just taking just taking one of the other users' powers, it's like no, there's your technique typically comes with a rule or a certain limit, and it's easy to copy that when it's just a single factor. Like I think Megumi, for instance, there's another person was like the premise of your ability is shadow, therefore that's a little bit easier to enact, whereas like you wouldn't be able to copy the full breadth of Sukuna's powers because it's layered in different tiers almost.
That I don't necessarily see. That's so one of the things they kind of, I think they talked about this, is like the limitless is a curse technique that people could use, but it wasn't that good without utilizing the 6 eyes.
The 6 eyes, exactly.
So much effort. And so when we see Yuta utilizing like Sky, which he picked up during this fight, and using it kind of as well or better than she did, considering he managed to just go 1, 2, 3, and she had to do a whole spinny routine to toss it back at Ishigori. Which
I say better because his limitless like curse limitless curse spirit. Not sorry, his limitless curse is in his from the Rika and stuff like that. And that's why it's better, because there's more power to it, and it gives more flexibilities for it.
And that's a fair question. I don't know if I want to go with that, only because if she had the ability to loop 3 full rotations, that's a pretty long turn, and that would be a longer distance covered by her arms as far as like measuring the circumference of a circle.
Yep.
Of that at the max wingspan in comparison to like 3 quick punches. So it's more like she had the ability to cover extra space, and we don't see Yuta moving nearly as much Sky as we ever saw her move. Like when she did
and like I said, that's why I said like I don't think it's impossible. I just think that it's the when there's more to it, it's not 100% copy, I think, for anything. So when there's now extra conditions or extra versions or extra of these abilities that need to be stacked together, that's what I'm saying. I feel like that's what makes it more a little complicated, or at least a little more complex as far as being able to, I guess I'm not thinking about complicated from an execution standpoint, but complicated from like a bringing out that power point.
I do think that because of the nature of like the limitless, it would take him like a lot more time to like actually practice and train with it. Because like, let's be real, like the way he uses curse speech, like he just was like, don't move. And it was like, oh, all right. So he just like slapped on the glove and like kind of covered his mouth a bit so you didn't see what he was doing. And then the next time you see him talking, it's like, well, it's too late now. You wouldn't have known that all of a sudden he would be able to be a curse speech user.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I agree, which again, him having more utilization of Inumaki's power than Inumaki in the story in a meaningful way is hilarious. But like him actually being able to do that stuff is kind of like suggests to me that he'd be able to get like the principle of it, and then slowly, I think at least he'd be able to figure out blue and red. I don't know if he'd be able to do purple because it would take so much time, but I think somebody like you would definitely be able to do like blue and red.
Because
whether or not it would be worth it for the curse energy output, though, that's another question.
Yeah, and again, I guess that's my big question mark kind of point is like the output, and maybe not even because red is powerful, man. Like you might get the output, but like the control, we were just talking about that. Like, how do you even control it any better? I think that's like a whole nother question. But yeah, I think Yuta's pretty broken as is.
Yeah. I mean, his next copy ability is going to be this dude with the whole high output of a blast, even though Rikakin does the same thing, but to be able to do high output of a blast consecutively, still a pretty useful curse technique to copy.
Yeah. Because I mean, like we saw, like, again, there's no one like Aniki pointed out, we know who has the power and the capacity. So even though he may not execute it at that same level of power, he's already doing much more than anybody else is doing output wise. So it's still gonna be pretty effective copy.
And the part of the reason why I feel like Ishigori ended up with such a high curse energy output is that his technique is ultimately just the release of a bunch of cursed energy.
Mm-hmm.
Which also means that his domain is basically you just getting lit up. But, which, good luck with that. Even without like a block, because like even without an instant hit condition, just having a multi-directional laser constantly firing at you at all times is kind of ridiculous.
I mean, guess what domain expansion is? You get to have a critical hit within that specific time of how much you're able to maintain the domain expansion.
As long as, well, then you have people like Megumi who don't have
limits, because it's not complete and everything. And
it's not focused on getting it's not focused on getting a guaranteed hit either, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Megumi realized that didn't need to be his priority, because when your technique revolves around creating a bunch of chimera and Shikigami, you could try to reach that level or focus in a way that Dagon did, for example, where it's just, yep, my Shikigami just appear already ripping your body apart. Nothing you can do about it.
Right.
But
and it can also from shadows, it just appeared on you.
Like, yeah. Whereas, and it could be that because of the fact that they are made from shadows, they can't do that, or they can only appear in shadowy spots on their body. And that's why he was like, I don't need to make that rule, because you're going to have all kinds of different rules to make sure that it works. And he could have decided just utilizing the shadow garden around me, just having a big domain and having a big area where I'm fighting my opponent, where I don't need to create a pocket dimension which conserves curse energy, because while simultaneously having a bigger playground and being able to pop in and out and turn myself in the shadow and have as many Shikigami as I need, that's a way bigger reward. Just having the access to repeated Shikigami summons and not having to worry about them breaking is way more of a benefit than I think any guaranteed hit automatically would be, because you can kind of create your own opportunities anyway.
And then if he eventually has a Shikigami or ability that can store that power, like store curse power similarly, so now it's like, because we already know that he can store items, right? So if he can store energy in that space in some shape or form, right? Again, I think that I keep really enjoying the idea that domain expansion can probably be utilized in other ways. Now, what if he has a concentrated amount of energy over some period of time, right? And then he does a domain expansion, but it's contained to a weapon. And now he has a sword of shadow that is a conglomeration of the powers of the Shikigami, without the downside of, like, if it breaks, they won't disappear because they're already in the shadow, but also whatever extra stored curse energy is like from an external source even is inside of the sword. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's other cool
weapons
things that can
imbued
happen
by its user, Joe. So yeah, I could definitely see that.
right. So what if he's able to imbue it from other people's curse energy now? I think and again, you see how Sukuna's super interested in this power. I think we're still like underestimating the depth of what that ability is.
Like that's why Toji named him Megumi, blessings. Like,
Yep.
whatever
Blessings.
blessings that he comes up with, he's technically the supposed heir of the Zenin clan, but you know, I'm guessing
You
like
say about Maki?
he keeps the Fishikori name, but he steals the Zenin abilities of the shadows and shit, and just like, hey, call it a day. Like that's definitely I can definitely see that happening, but we still don't have an idea of what Sukuna's reasoning to keep Megumi for this long, because he had this first intention of wanting to kill him, only to see that his own potential and his own he technically gave him, like, you know, if you use your imagination a little bit, you could have won that fight. I guess like everybody that's been like that Megumi fought or like with Sukuna and has been trained from with Gojo, they always tell him to enhance your imagination. You could go so far with your curse abilities and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're always like, man, you got a lot of potential you're not utilizing.
Like stop being a straight man. Stop being so like a stickler for everything to the rules. Like you can go above and beyond these rules. You could probably break them if you need to. And yeah,
like because there was like Megumi's will is like he's too limited and he's too willing to throw his life away, and he doesn't like he's not like I gotta live no matter what. He doesn't have like a romanticized view on life. And if you think back to even because like I'm like looking back through the previous Killing Game stuff, and I was looking at the Megumi fight, and I'm at the part where he's just like, oh, you disgust me, when he's like disgusted by the girl, because it's like he's very rigid in how he like views things. And even if you or go even further back to like when he whooped those kids' ass in middle school, and he was sitting on a pile of beat up kids, and then they were like, why did you do that? And he's like, you have to ask us, proof you deserved it.
Proof that you deserve it.
Like, what? If I don't know why I got my ass whooped, that's proof I deserve to have my ass whooped?
You're pathetic. You peasants. You peasants.
I mean, his only reason, his motivation was so that he can like give the good people an equal amount of chance of life and that sort of thing, and I can respect it. And even though his motivation for the Culling Game is to save his sister, like he views her as a good person. He feels like she needs to be saved, equal chance of living and everything like that. And whoever's like abusing their powers, abusing the curse technique, abusing everything in life, they just need to be beat up and punished, and or if needed to be killed. Because at least Megumi knows, like, if he has to kill, he'll kill.
Like, well, and that's like I said, I'm looking back at the Megumi fight and how that dude pulled up and was like, yeah, I'm gonna fight, and then Megumi immediately pulls up on him, knocks him out the window, and just stabs him in the head, like beats his face in, then stabs him in the head, like, yep, now you're dead. Cool. And it's like he didn't even hesitate. He just puts the dude down within like 2 to 3 pages. And that's after finding out. It was like, the thing that was even scarier about it is like, it was after the rule was added that you can exchange points. It's like specifically, that dude shows up. They're like, new rule added. You can exchange points. And Megumi's like, and just murks the dude anyway.
That's
like,
cute.
I feel like you had to do that right away, so that the enemies doesn't exchange their point to make a new rule in that position.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that like Reggie's like, damn, what a waste of points. Like instantly, like, oh, I recognize what we could have done there.
Yep. That's why like Megumi had to act quickly. Yeah, you need to die.
Like, also remembering that the comedian exists and that power.
And he has never killed. He has not killed a single person.
Well, because his whole thing is about jokes, so it kind of makes sense that like the punchline isn't going to be someone's everlasting death. It's going to be them barely surviving it usually.
Right.
Megumi could have just said like, all right, since this whole point exchange, I could have just gave you a point and you survive another 19 more days.
Like, and the one thing that is kind of unfortunate is that they aren't going to be able to get rid of that rule about they can get rid of the mandatory killing aspect of acquiring points, but that means people still have to find each other and exchange points.
But then you only need to change like 1 point each.
Yeah, you can do 1 point.
And I think
but
losing a point changes
that still doesn't stop. In order for you to get some amount of points greater than your point value, you would need to still then kill. Some people are going to have to get killed in the process.
Yeah,
is the way I see it, anyways.
But then by that time, you have 19 days to think of a way to get them out and breaking rules.
Right. I mean, the next rule is essentially to circumvent that to an extent. But I think by letting people out, you increase the propensity to fight because you get rid of the people who don't want to be there. But now there's more stock, right, in the people who are present.
Mm-hmm. What's horrible?
And also, I guess
sucks is that even if you get out from
without
there,
giving out your points, so like you would have to forfeit your points to leave. Kind of, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting.
No, you forfeit. You lose your curse. You lose their curse powers, and you die basically.
So that's what I'm saying. The rule to circumvent all of that is going to be very interesting. How they end up wording that, I think.
I think the most they're going to have to do is like make it where players have to achieve X number of points or do this so that they can escape without losing curse technique. It's going to have to be something like that. That's kind of like the only way I can see it functioning. They have to come up with something like to really make it.
It'd be nice if it was that simple. I think Utah would need to drop 80 people.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's gonna have to be something that like is just gonna have to be like 3. That's why like I'm saying something, but it's probably gonna be some things.
Yeah.
Because like Utah just wanted to establish a communication with all the other colonies.
I wouldn't be surprised if a rule that is helpful-ish is made from someone that isn't even directly connected to them in a whole other colony.
Because I could also see them adding something like all the colonies are now connected directly, and so then it's like they all exist as one colony.
So yeah, even if they don't exist together,
you can have that one
travel
big
between colonies. Like there'd be a point that you can travel between any colony. That was
one of Utah's rules that he was trying to
that's exactly why I said it. That would be one of those things that would basically tie all of the spaces together. So now if Utah can just again go in and slaughter everyone in every single colony, that'll just make everything easier.
Now that he's got like he already had the ability to just release curse energy, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to just pull up with Ishigori's ability and just air out places is gonna definitely make it, an issue.
Coming in with that kaiju, that Godzilla blast, he just about to
just Zero Blast there, Zero Blast
here, level. just re-grand Zero everywhere.
That would make everything easier if Utah wasn't as the bloodthirsty, because he was the only one that didn't want to kill civilians. Everybody else that had no choice but killing civilians. It's just they were in his circle. They're in a way, especially the cockroach and stuff like that. Like they got within his area, and all the people that was in the area died, and he gained the points from there. It's all very interesting to see how JJK is going to keep going with this,
especially when we don't know for sure which characters are for example, Nobara could be dead, Nobara could not be dead.
Right.
They made it very vague, because even Megumi was when Yuji asked Megumi so what about Nobara, and Megumi just gave him a whole depressing face for him, I see.
Yeah. Okay.
So for me, it's it's only a matter of time before we have to get a final answer on that. But then if all of this stuff is happening on the same day, I think the next thing we have to see is what's going on with Fifth Kari. Because I think almost everything we're reading in the Cullen games right now is happening on the same day.
Yes, they are.
Like I think the rate of the Zenin
we also
clan,
haven't seen
all
Maki. We also haven't seen Maki. So if there is some time offset, they might have the clan might have some special something, and maybe like Nobu's over there receiving some type of special treatment or healing or something, or even some special training with Maki. This current Maki. So there's some stuff that can be going on behind the scenes. If there's like, I'm just thinking that there may be like a couple day overlaps certain places. I think by the time we get out of like where we are right now, at least several days would have passed between each of the colonies.
which I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm.
Though I do hope we don't get any more like bonus flashbacks to conversations that we didn't actually see happen with what's his face.
Because like Kenjaku?
Yeah, no, not like Kenjaku. The tree dude.
Mm-hmm.
Tengen.
Because you remember, it's like we see them pull up in Tengen's room and they have this conversation, but then later on we get a flashback to them having a conversation with Tengen that we never saw on
information
screen.
That we never got initially.
Yeah.
I feel like that's gonna happen at least one more time. And
I'm like, dude, that's not how that works. If you show us the whole conversation, like why write it like you showed us the whole conversation? Like that still irritates me a little.
Yeah, no. I mean, I try not to be irritated because I know that it was when it was initially written, I had that thought already. I was like, you're not really showing us everything here. Was already the premise that I kind of felt in seeing that portion. But what I'm going to say is that was one of the first times that we came from that and we got a big break from Gege and came back swinging. And I think the premise of like, hey, let me get to a point and take a break and then continue on. I think I'm okay with that right now. If we're going to keep being very intentional, I think Gege is being very intentional about the way that they want to try to tell the story. And I did feel like coming back off of that initial like big break that it was just like, oh man, the pacing feels weird. And like, it's like you're trying to re-grab your footing, almost like, hate to say it, like you didn't think beyond this point initially. But like now that we see like, oh no, there's been thoughts. It's just that it was probably just like a little hard turn to kind of make that transition in the direction of the culling games. And now we're here. You know what I mean? So I have a lot of confidence in Gege right now. They're proving themselves very much so as we go through very. I guess we're in the same arc, but we're situation to situation inside of the arc.
And it's like there's still like a lot more that he can do. He also left some pieces off the chessboard, and it wasn't just for Gojo either. It was also for Kenjaku as well, because you have these every other chapters. You see Kenjaku, he was in China, negotiating with China's emissary about, I'm gonna say, with the cursed sorcerers and more cursed technique in that sort of way, because he himself, or either Geto or Kenjaku says himself, like Japan is the main source of where the most strongest, the more cursed sorcerer technique, cursed sorcerers and powers are established within Japan. Everywhere else, it's different. Everybody who can establish negative energy, negative thoughts and emotion, that's how the establishment of these cursed energy comes out of. So any places within the countryside or like in the midlands and that stuff, that's where there's not too much that's happening, it's not going to develop as strong as cursed sorcerers and magics. Now I'm wondering, when he went to China, would that mean like China itself didn't have as much negative emotions or curse technique, where it's like separated or more like divided each other with more sorcerers in their own families?
I wonder. I also think like you gotta think about size. Aniki kind of mentioned earlier about like Japan being an archipelago versus like this big, larger space of land kind of spread kind of thing. As far as that was when we talked about Kaiju number 8, but just the fact that like the sizing and the concentration, or even maybe the pockets of concentration where things are, is a little bit different based off of the layout.
Because I remember Gege have done a little bit information of how other no-name countries deal with like cursed sorcerers. Like they treat them as like witches or warlock, and they torture them, that sort of thing. Like the two girls that were cursed sorcerers, like Geto saved, but he had to kill the entire village and stuff like that.
Yeah, because they don't, like, it's not a normalized thing.
Yeah.
So they just assume that
they're like
wherever there's a person who is a core sorcerer and there's a curse, that person is the source of the curse, instead of that person's ability manifesting kind of being more akin to like a symptom of there being curses in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's about what I think is kind of happening, is that like I think that curses form and then people develop curse techniques.
Yeah.
And then as people utilize curse techniques and become mages and stuff like that, then it creates more fear of like what the supernatural things they combat are like, which leads to stronger curses. Thus the Gojo cycle thing, where they're like, Gojo being born seemed to increase the amount of special grades and all these other stuffs. So
right. Again, even backs to Undead Unluck, there's these balances that have to happen in these worlds a lot of the time, and I think again that's kind of that thing. Even Yuta, more so than even Gojo existing, the fact that Yuta exists in a time that Gojo also exists, and then Itadori and Suka existing as well at the time.
Kenjaku had something planned for all of this just to happen all at the same time.
So like I think there's that. I think also like as the world obviously grows, you expect there to be higher chances of occurrences of certain things. So I think there's a lot of strategic and calculated things happening here. Yeah, again, like I said, I trust Gege. I trust Gege the way I trust Oda. I'm gonna say it like that with confidence on my chest. I trust Gege the way I trust Oda at this point.
I think we sound pretty good for JJK. You guys good?
Yeah, I was trying to. Well, yeah, we were trying to. I feel like we were trying to create some time for Vash to get here, but
yeah, I don't think he's able to come in.
Yeah, I tried to.
Unless you guys want to talk Black Clover real quick, and then maybe he'll be able to just like pull over and park. And
all I can really say is that I feel like Black Clover is ending. I feel like that's the direction we're going.
Like he's done.
Tabata sales are starting to go down, and while that's not the end of the world, I do think it can be a little discouraging. It's been hard on his health. Like I said, we had a chapter that was just 9 pages. It kind of seems like for his own health, he might want to maybe switch into a role where maybe he puts out some supplementary Black Clover novels in the future, and like maybe cover some future stories or something like that, and those can get adapted into anime or something like that. But
I think
I don't know if this weekly manga thing is for him, and the demons feel like the final antagonist anyway.
Yes, I think you just put it the way I feel. Some light novels, something where he doesn't have to worry about the drawing as much. I think that's a big factor. Just give us the story. You have the art style. You have people that studied under you and stuff. So later on, if we wanted to bring back something, amazing. But it's an end. I need it to end. Like I was telling you guys earlier, I needed to just go ahead and end. I feel like trying to. I don't want him to get in his pride, and let that block the blessing of what Black Clover has been. It's been a beautiful journey. We're here. Things are starting to get redundant. I'm not gonna lie. Things are unique, but the redundancy factor is starting to grow a little bit more. And I think we established a good point for where Yuno is. We've established a good point where Asta is. The world is in this certain place. It might be a little bit like Naruto, like maybe right before we get to having Yuno or Asta be the Wizard King. Yami may have to step up for a period of time and be the Wizard King as just like an intercessory kind of like thing, and even maybe just like a placeholder until there's like an official decision made. I see these type of things, but I don't need that to be 50 chapters.
Yeah,
I don't need that to be 50 chapters in any kind of stretch of the way.
There's parts of this chapter, like especially like when you look at today's chapter, you look at like page 9, where as Asta is like dodging and slashing, it genuinely does kind of look like Yami is the one who's fighting here.
Mm-hmm. And even with the sword, you saw that sword grip and the backhand, and just everything about it. Like again, I'm also wouldn't be surprised. I'm gonna say this. wouldn't be surprised, a different but refreshing touch. Asta doesn't make it out of this fight. Asta has to seal Lucifer in some kind of way, which takes him away from having to be physically present in this realm. And Asta is regarded as this guardian. They'll build statues and all of these different things for him, but he's not able to exist in that realm anymore. I think that's a possibility. And then I think your take as well, I'm gonna let you give your take, but I think your take about the two brothers.
Oh yeah, with
brothers.
Because the way I look at it is, like you mentioned, like you did mention, like having like somebody like Yami in the interim, or I could see it being Noel Silva, though it'd be nice if it was Yami, just because it would kind of show that shift past the prejudice a bit more within the Clover Kingdom, especially since Yami would have been somebody who was willing to sacrifice so much for them to get to this point while being rejected as a foreigner, and then have Asta get that intelligence that he needs to become Wizard King, while having flesh out his role both as an agent and ally of the Clover Kingdom, but also to deal with his birthright as like the actual heir apparent of the Spade Kingdom, where you could actually see like a unification of the kingdoms, where you have the Diamond Kingdom. We know that what's his name succeeded in administering that drug or whatever to the king, so that they're fixing a lot of their issues. The Heart Kingdom is already an ally of the Clover Kingdom, so now you just need like the Spade and Clover to unite, and then the most we're going to get is we could go to a foreign invasion arc where we have to deal with like maybe them fighting Yami's people, but that seems like such a strange turn. And just like any incorporation of the dwarves, because we've gone up to demons, feels like a step down in villainy. Sense of scale. So
it's such a big bad. It's such a the current big bad is such a big bad that it just doesn't make any sense. Again, a spin-off series, continuation, flash forward 20 years with a little OVA, take your time. You could really, I'm okay if we get a couple more OVAs on the side, like how we've seen The Promised Neverland and Demon Slayer do. Like I'm okay. Give me a little, 6 months passed. I wasn't expecting a chapter. Here's a little OVA about some more story about Yami's kingdom. Maybe Yami goes and he's an emissary between, and they're trying to expand relationships, whatever. Maybe Noel is the advisor apparent to the person. Any of the captains really can step up and be that other advisor to the Wizard King. So I can see any of them kind of stepping into that. I can even see Yami stepping down from being a captain. So there's so much directions, and I get it. There's so much that you want to write about. I just don't. I think you finish the story where you are. You put a close on it. You give us. I think we've gotten answers. I don't think there's too many loose ends right now, realistically, as far as the main plot line is concerned. And you tie that up. Maybe there isn't a Wizard King again. Maybe there's some type of democracy system, and the knights collectively work to do. Who knows? But the point of where we are, Asta and Yuno's journey, them being the protagonist and Deuteronomist of the story, closing that and saying, hey, this is what it takes. And even just some parting words on what it means to change, because there's an undertone of the world and the way that we view things in the world that needs to be addressed here. I think Attack on Titan is kind of deals with and is dealing with that same wrestling of like, hey, there's actually a big point that I'm actually trying to pull out here, right? There's actually like an overarching theme that I'm trying to present to you. And I think that we just need to see that wrap up. 20 chapters. I know that they haven't announced it, but I would say 20 chapters is what Black Clover needs right now. 20 chapters, wrap up the fight, maybe one more big final, maybe one more big final, something fight-wise, just to give us whatever. But I think we've gotten
not the seven
as
deadly
much
sins,
as...
man. Not the seven deadly sins.
Yeah, I just don't want that. I don't want that. But maybe 20 chapters, and I think 20 chapters is even pushing it. I think, but you kind of just it's chapter. No more up the action. You see people stories, each of the kingdoms and see the state of the main kingdoms, you know, who's healed from what, and kind of go from there, if that makes sense.
Okay. Usually not Shueisha doesn't usually give you like 20 more chapters just to finish. They're probably like if the
Well, I said 20. I said 20 just because I think there's like a transition. I think there's some more action type of scenes. I think there's like the gates of the world. There's more chaos, and there's maybe like 10 chapters of that, some type of conclusion, and then just whatever. So maybe not even 20, maybe 15 chapters, maybe.
I mean, I would say like Shueisha would allow 15 to 20 chapters just so that he can squeeze whatever's left of Black Clover. And then like, because then they're gonna eventually have to bring the anime back to recap to finish this entire thing. But I mean, like after its movie, because it is getting its movie. But I could definitely see that. Like usually a series ends way before the anime would like a good 2-3 more years afterwards until like it finished the entire series, unlike Attack on Titan being milk for another part within the series for another year.
I would like Black Clover to get the same Black Clover treatment again. I would like them to just get their episodes. I would really prefer that we don't get Attack on Titan final season parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would really like because we know that there's not much left to the story. You know what I mean? Just give us the episodes. Give it to us. Don't give us a cur. Just give it us. Give us the however many episodes that it's going to take, and then just keep pushing that out. As long as there's resources there for that, I would like that for them. I think I've really appreciated the way that Black Clover has been released. And I would like to see that back again. I think that's what kept people engaged. I think that's what allowed people to get in it after the fact. So I would love to see that for them. I hope that they do. I hope that they get the finish that they deserve. I think Black Clover has earned its place in where it is currently, and I hope that they get all the love that they deserve. In its final kind of hurrah to the end.
All right. Unfortunately, Vash could not make it within the 2-hour time that we have and to get into One Piece. So I guess we could just go straight into One Piece at this moment. So Ken, do you want to start? The 9.
Yeah. Sam, have you been reading before I even start?
I am sorry, I have not been.
Where have you picked up chapter 1?
I mean, like I've stopped for a good year and a half to let Wano build up, and then I can continue reading it.
You're in Wano. I've done that.
But you know, so Twitter has a good job like, spoiling everything, keeping me up of what is stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like so. It's funny, they're talking about this in a space just last night about like in a way One Piece is kind of like the current this current era's Dragon Ball Z. And I see that with how testy the fans kind of get at times with certain things. Yes. They're just so quick to snap. They're coming a little like regressive, like this is the superior series kind of thing. And it's interesting because on its good days, the One Piece community is really good about not spoiling things. But then the moment something like really groundbreaking happens, like a couple of weeks ago, now it's like One Piece is trending because everyone has to talk about it. Everyone just feels like, oh my God, I have to share this. I have to show this off. And then One Piece also has that same level of hate. So it's like, the people who hate One Piece have to talk about how much they hate One Piece because all the people who like One Piece One Piece has become a lot more infamous over the years, honestly. So I really do get that perspective of like, it sucks. Things kind of do get spoiled a lot, unfortunately, a lot more than I would care for it to be spoiled. While I think the Attack on Titans community is a little bit toxic in its own right, they've done a really great job for the past 2 years of not spoiling the stuff that's been happening over this final season part.
Especially with Toei have their own hack and they're not able to push on the episodes.
Okay,
hack, man.
I'm gonna be real with you. I have completely given up on dodging One Piece spoilers. Ooh. It is so much work.
It is. Especially if you use Twitter in a regular capacity at all.
It would be the most like filtered words in your Twitter to avoid like spoilers and stuff like that.
That's like one of the few upsides to like My Hero not being as popular anymore. That I used to have to mute, like during the war arc, I had to mute like 40 words every week.
Damn.
Just to guarantee that I would not get spoiled. And like with One Piece, it would be like I'd have to do the same thing, except it would be like I could mute those words on Sunday, unmute, or it's like I would be able to unmute those words Sunday, and then I'd have to just turn around and mute them right back up by like Tuesday, Wednesday, and then leave those muted all the way until Sunday. So it's like I'd be putting in mutes on the word Luffy, on Zoro, on Sanji, on Gear, on Awakening, on all these things for 5 to 6 days a week, and it's just like I'm like, it's not worth it, especially because I'm like on decent terms with some other content creators that are also like One Piece channels and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So of course their interactions and people who interact around them end up on my timeline anyway. It's just I'm just like, I'll just let myself be spoiled on One Piece. I still get to enjoy it, but yeah.
I've been reading. I've definitely been reading the early scans for like the past 3-4 weeks because I specifically didn't want to be spoiled about where we are right now. Yep. I think probably after the next 2 chapters, I'll probably go back to just waiting for my Sunday release, so I'm not double reading One Piece. But I get it. I truly get it.
Like if I don't see spoilers, cool. If I do, all right. I'm just not.
Yeah,
it's just too much.
I mean, literally, 11 whatever whenever it drops. Just you ain't. I can tell sometimes they didn't even finish reading the chapter. They were just like screenshot posts. I'm like yo, can you just relax? Like you didn't even need to put the you could have just said words. Like why did you need to put a whole entire page on Twitter?
One Piece 1045 was trending like last Monday, like on Monday.
Yeah, it was like Tuesday morning or Monday night.
Dude,
I thought I was tripping, bro. Like I went looking, I was like, did we get an early release? Did somebody really scan this? It was like, no, like people were talking. It was like snapshots on it. And it was like, I don't care. Or people are talking about their theories. And I was like, I don't care about your theory. Can you show me the chapter? Like, what are you talking about? You guys have been talking for like 5 days straight.
Anybody who post just a page and it's like rawness, I hate you. You're a bad person. You should feel bad. Because like the amount of times that like, because I used to have, like when I was doing those My Hero mutes, I even would mute the words like bro and like raw,
what,
dope, awesome.
What?
Because
that's all they would post, bro.
Because like people, yeah,
and then a scan.
like somebody would be like, bro, crazy. And then it's just a page. So like you have nothing to like take you out of you to see bro crazy.
I think there's like bots then. Those people have to be like bots or something like that.
Like that's what kills me. It's like actual humans tweeting like robots. And then you'll see they have like 300 likes and you're like, dog.
Try to filter this out. It's like what, 200 no's and bro.
That's how I would feel. Yeah, that's how I would feel about it. Like it'd be like, man, it's like y'all didn't use any of the hashtags. You got it like, bro, this crazy.
It's because the following side is just promoting it, or they paying for the promotion of it.
Like, yeah, it's like, bro, you're so clout hungry that instead of just actually having commentary or keeping this to a group chat or anything else like that.
And they have the chats. That's the worst part. They have the chats. They have the clubhouses. They have the Twitter spaces. They have the Twitter communities. They have Discords. But yet they still want to go out of their way to go and make a tweet publicly with images. And that's like I said, we was talking about it in a space last night, and I couldn't help but agree with the person when they said it. It was Moody Senpai. I couldn't help but agree. It was like, definitely feeling like the Dragon Ball Z of this current. Like y'all just don't have any type of class. Nobody can't beat Goku. Nobody is better than One Piece. Y'all are in the same cut from the same cloth at this point. You know what I mean?
Establishing emojis into their tweets now. You try to filter out emojis and shit too.
Bro, yeah. What is that? A monkey with a balloon with? God damn it! It's a One Piece spoiler.
Bro, like. And I guess it's kind of wild because it's, and this, I hate talking about it because it sounds very much old man yells at cloud, but it's like,
Abe Simpson.
look, I turned 29 this year, and when I was like 16, like a lot of times, like people were like, spoiler alert, like there was like this idea, this courtesy, like you try. And I feel like we fast forwarded 10 years now, and people who have like always been on social media haven't stepped into it as a sphere of like, this is another place, so to speak, that I'm interacting as a human, and thus need to pay attention to courtesy. They just like look at it as, this is a place where my thoughts go.
Yeah, I can thought dump. Like, I'm sorry, this isn't your notes on your phone. This is
right.
a public forum.
So it's like this. It's transition. Like social media is kind of transitioned for, and it's because of people being kind of raised on like, this is the real consequences of like having technology raise your kids, is that a lot of them are like terminally online.
It's also worse where we're in a generation now where people want that popularity. They want the clout. They want to be the whole.
Right, by any means necessary is the bad part. It's a like by any means necessary.
Because it doesn't matter if you aren't popular in real life, which that's kind of cool. Like, you don't have to be the coolest kid in the club, like in the classroom anymore, to be like some form of successful, because at the end of the day, if you build up an online internet brand, you can probably leverage that just as much or more from marketing purposes and branding purposes, like those people who get like a viral tweet every like couple days and end up selling vibrators under their tweet. You know, it's like they can do that, and they're doing it because they generate so much traction that inevitably people do click on these products that are linked in those, and people do actually make some purchases here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like purely like the clout demon. You just got to get that next hit, that dopamine out from the likes on your screen. You just need it. And so that's where we are with like One Piece spoilers.
That makes it like scary, because like we see One Piece, like we still see One Piece in 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, another 10 more years. We're like,
well, and that's the thing, is that every One Piece fan should know spoiling the One Piece is bad. I guarantee you, thousands to millions of people will be spoiled on the reveal of the One Piece.
Oh yeah.
So there's two. While we're talking about, we're not even in the One Piece portion, but while we're talking about just community stuff, there's two other things, one minor, one major thing that I'm annoyed with at times. And the other thing is, if you're gonna show something cool, right? Everything isn't One Piece. If you're gonna show something cool on the internet, I shouldn't have to be asking for the source, man. I guess I get so irritated by that. Oh man, this is such a great series. Check it out. What's the series? Like, again, like in this information age and stuff, it's like, it's just weird the way that we choose to communicate about like certain things. And I guess like the other thing that's like a slight point of irritation is just like, so you have these series, you have these spaces, you have these content creators. And again, it's just, I guess, going back to that idea of like, I'll do anything for a like, even if it's toxic. Like, even if it's just the worst possible thing, it doesn't matter, because if you give this 1,000 likes or whatever the case may be, 1 million likes, like I got the attention I needed from it to funnel whatever moment or instant gratification that is received from that. And it just sucks. It sucks that we don't have enough care in ourselves to just be like, again, I want everyone to like anime. I want you to like the animes that you like. I want you to share the animes that you like. I want to, someone just tagged us. Someone's like, yo, you should read this. And I'm going to read it.
Just got tagged with Blue Box.
I appreciate you suggesting that, because I literally just scrolled over Blue Box and I was like, why haven't I checked this out yet? So now that you putting that out to me, I'm literally going to go take the effort to read a couple pages of that later today. That's what I want from the community. I always say that. I feel like the anime community should be this really beautiful place where we share and we unite under the common factor of anime, but also the diversity of anime, because anime isn't just shonen, anime isn't just a one-trick pony. I really genuinely feel like anime and manga, there's a niche for everyone. There's a story to be told for everyone, and if that story isn't being told, then you have the room to tell that story yourself. To, and such, you can tell the story yourself if yours doesn't exist. Other perspective, and I just feel like our community, I don't know if it's, some people try to blame it as an age thing. It's like, oh, the younger generation came in, but it's like, no, a lot of the gatekeeping and toxic stuff that I see is often from the guys that are our age, 20, in their late 20s, early 30s. Like, y'all
who wants other people to face the same kind of trauma.
So the gatekeeping is like in our generation, and the weird spoiler stuff is like that's the younger people because they've just been used to being online.
Yeah.
But the weirdo gatekeeping mindset, the super elitism that comes off of like, especially because okay, I'm trying to figure out a nice way to say this. A lot of people
sorry, go for it. I was gonna say with like the people who feel like in our age who are triggered by what a younger generation have said onto Twitter, and then they just want to feel like, all right, I'm gonna speak on behalf of every other people within my age within this group and like of social media. But no, you don't. You're just speaking for yourself. And then that caused a whole entire gatekeeping of hate into all of this stuff. And where he's coming from was probably not like the worst thing. Like, but at the same time, like that's like strictly your own opinion, and you just making this keeping away from the new younger generation from more establishing, exploring more of your favorite kind of content or anything that you want to go into. But you're restricting him from it.
And what kills me is I remember it was a couple even years ago where I like had this whole there was like this whole thing where there people were like, I stand by gatekeeping anime. We need to keep these people out, and they had done a whole thread, and it led to like the gatekeeping discussion arc of Twitter, where everybody was kind of actually like talking about like how absurd these things are. And I remember like different people like arguing with me about it, and I'm like, no, you're not that special. You don't own this. It's not like the fact that just sitting down and watching TV without the analysis, or like if you're just empty consuming something, it's not really a hobby. It's just a distraction. And I feel like a lot of people, or it's like people watch certain seinen or read certain seinen, and then they decide that they're automatically smarter than everybody else. And then while simultaneously highlighting they don't understand what a seinen and a shonen is, like the amount of people who like are like seinen are just better. Attack on Titan is a seinen, and it's like, no, it isn't. It's literally ran in a shonen magazine. It's a shonen manga. It doesn't matter if it has lots of killing in it. And like what it really lets you know is that a lot of people just like see gore or like see like more visceral violence.
There's a darker theme here, so it's more mature, and because it's more mature, that makes it a seinen. It's like that's not how that works. These titles actually have very simple breakdowns to them. Yeah, it's like the very simple breakdown of them are basically age brackets. Therefore, you can, again, Kaiju number 8 being a good example. Why is Kaiju 8 not a seinen? Because the world that it revolves around, the main point of what it revolves around is a shonen. Is shonen. It's young boys. It's motivating young guys to be ambitious, blah 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 blah. And like I said, I get it. For people who have been watching anime for years and they start to get like desensitized to that type of stuff, then it's like, yeah, you're probably tired of seeing the same tropes over and over again. So that's when people start to divert their attention to other different genres. But it's like, again, you don't have to wait for that. Like you can just check out other stuff, guys. Like it's okay to like something that isn't Dragon Ball Z, constant fighting, blah 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 blah. It's okay to check out something that's a little against your palate, because sometimes like we were talking about earlier, I didn't like JoJo for a long time. But because my peers and stuff are talking about JoJo, people that I respect are talking about JoJo, I was like, man, I keep trying to give it a chance. And then I finally I got into it, and I was like, I really actually do appreciate and like this series. Like there is a lot going for this series here. For me, who's like, I like the art, I like the fashion, I like all these other different things that go into it, and you start to see other things to like in a series. So then when you watch something that's outside of your natural wheelhouse as a genre, then you're like, oh wow, this series isn't about powers and whatever, but like the color and the artwork, the pacing and the storytelling, all of these other different factors start to become more relevant to you. And then it's just like, I guess also to that, like, I wish people would get more educated about this thing that you like, you know, look up what a flat character is, bro. Like, you don't have to become a writer, but like you see spaces and people talking about these different, look up what a protagonist is, bro. Look up what the antagonist actually is. Like, it's not just a villain. Like, look up what these things are. Like, learn a little bit.
Dude, okay, so I love One Piece. You remember we were all sitting here in our law hats and straw hats. But one of the things that drives me up a wall is that you'll see One Piece fans be like, One Piece is mature. It has themes. Its themes are slavery, war, and it's like that's not how that works. A theme is not just an idea. A theme is a message. It's like a thesis. It's like the whole point of the story and like what it's trying to tell you. So like One Piece's theme is not war and slavery. It's that like being enslaved is the antithesis of the nature of the story, which is that freedom is a man's greatest treasure, and like that kind of stuff. Where it's like this isn't, and like if it were a theme of the story, if like slavery were specifically the thing being commented on instead of freedom, Luffy would be a character who is a lot more conscientious and is a lot more focused on the liberation of the slaves throughout the entirety of the story.
Right. And then in addition to that, your freedom, your journey to freedom isn't something that you should be living alone. And the idea of a nakama then comes into place. And the idea that also on that same tone of like, it doesn't just have to be your blood that's important to who you make as a family. You can go out and journey and find freedom in life by journeying with other people who also are on a path to finding their own specific freedom. Again, when you break these concepts down, the concepts here are thing. But then, you know, like a couple of weeks ago when the chapter released and everyone was like, oh man, it's so cartoony. I was like, what have you been watching? I'm sorry, have you not been watching One Piece with me for 1,000+ chapters? When has he not presented this as being the most looniest cartoon? The main protagonist is a rubber guy. Like, this man blows air into his arm to make a balloon arm. Like, what do you mean? Like, oh, it's suddenly too cartoony. Like, what are you talking about? It's a comic, it's an anime, it's a manga. They're all cartoony things, guys. They're not even targeted at 31-year-olds to begin with. Like, you know, again, I'm not saying that to thing. Again, I'm gonna watch anime forever. I'm gonna play Pokemon forever because I enjoy it. It does bring me back certain senses of nostalgia, but I'm not so displaced that I'm just not understanding that I am not the intended audience for the thing that I am reading.
And that's the thing with One Piece, which is that it's very clear that Oda has always said he wants to draw the dreams of boys and children more than he's like been like, I want to draw the dreams of boys and children while also honoring and making it a point to feed and keep happy adults. Like, if anything, he's like, if you want to watch this and you need to keep in touch with your childhood in order to properly enjoy it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it is anyway. Like, it's fair. He's like, hey, maintain, because like to a certain degree, like if you think about it, Luffy being like 19 years old, 18, 19, 17, having these adventures makes him having this wacky cartoony power even more appropriate. Because like, when's the last, like as you get older, some of the more goofy early cartoon gags you kind of forget about or don't think about as much, especially if you've been consuming anime. But like, let's dive into this chapter just like a little bit. And like when Kaido hits Luffy from the top, one, for a chapter to chapter comparison, we've been like, this is kind of like the thriller bark phase of the post time skip, where whatever is coming after this is about to be hard, fast, and an upping of the stakes to the nth degree, which is why I think Reverie was placed where it was, because it's kind of like how we got that stuff like after Alabasta, showing us or around Long Green, Long Island, where Ace versus Blackbeard happens, and then we like cut away to some other stuff and then come back to that way later, where that's kind of like what I see Reverie and the SSG and all this other stuff as. It's like, all right, we're cutting away from all that though, and now we're going to do Thriller Bark and some other stuff, and when we come back, it'll be time for the Straw Hats to really get engaged with the main plot of the outside world.
I think the only difference with that is that the pieces are closer together.
Yeah.
Like before, it was like things are happening on the other side of the Grand Line, and it's like no, like the army's over here, the Marines over here, this other sector of the Marine is over here, CP9 is on the island. Like everything's actually really close, and like you said, the stakes are just they're gonna rapidly like stack on top of each other and bring everything to center around this moment, and that's already happening. I think, like I said before, I think Wano ends up being that place. Wano is the place. And even if everything doesn't stay in Wano, Wano is, I think, ultimately the place that you get back to, because this idea of freedom, again, the idea is the most present in Wano than anywhere else that we've seen in the story to this point.
And that's part of why I was bringing up the Thriller Bark stuff, because like if you think back to like how he's been going, like one, we got the Nightmare Luffy parallels, but if you remember the black box scene where he's placed inside the black box and Moria punches him and that's what splits the island in half.
Right.
Except we have like that culmination where he goes to do that to Luffy here, and Luffy bends the ground around him and uses it to bounce up and trampoline.
Right.
But this idea of like that freedom, and that's when Kaido himself comments on the freedom you're talking about, where he's like, he's coded in hockey, he's manipulating the environment, his body is doing all this other stuff. He's straight up freestyling and like this whole battle. Like he's just kind of making it up as he goes. This
is from the guy whose greatest power that we've seen has been from him being drunk and inebriated, and then not the freedom, that liquor being what gave Kaido the freedom to use his powers the way that he was using his powers, except there is no trigger to this, there is no catalyst to this for Luffy. This is just his natural being this level of free. And you see that Kaido's mentality is actually crumbling around this. He's impressed, but he's also kind of a little disheartened isn't necessarily the word I want to use, but he's a little bit kind of like, wait, like you can really do this, you can get this level of freedom just because, like, why haven't I been it? Because remember, Kaido thinks he's that guy.
Yeah, Kaido
thinks he's Joy Boy.
And it was when he was tossing Luffy off that he straight up, he's like, so you couldn't be Joy Boy either, where it's like, we're at a point where he has started to, or really has given up on actually being Joy Boy. But that doesn't change the fact that was in his cards, in his mind, that he had that potential. And so now you got this happening, and it's kind of reminding me of like Shigaraki versus Redestro a little, where like, because you even got him naming his devil fruit Smiles, because Kaido is the one like trying to bring the smiles to the world, smiles, like just like Joy Boy,
the joy.
And so it very much reminds me of like the Redestro versus Shigaraki, where now Shigaraki, in this case Luffy, is like stepping up, like, nah, bro, I don't really care about any of the stuff you're talking about or your dreams.
Right. I've got my own take on freedom, and I'm going to put that on the world. That was wild. We just compared Shigaraki to Luffy, and it was actually 100% accurate.
Well, it's easy to forget that, like, one, the League of Villains are written more like shonen protagonist groups than Class 1A are, which I think is something that's like kind of easy to like miss. But then, like, ultimately, in verse, like, Luffy is canonically a villain.
This is also true.
Like, yes,
very true. He's a pirate. Yeah, you be forgetting that.
Like, yes, he does some good things, but he's incidentally whooped a lot of ass that were just people doing their jobs.
Casually.
So, and it's the best example of that is the Impel Down, where dude just freed like almost all the world's most dangerous prisoners just to get a chance at getting out of the prison to go save Ace. Like, that is what a villain would do. Yeah, I'll create an entire prison riot to save one prisoner.
Gum, yes.
Like,
Yeah.
so, but when you so one of the things though that I will say is that just circling back to this chapter is that Luffy's fruit is 100% the fruit that people want to replicate. Like the zone fruits, like the dragon fruit must have been the closest he got to making like Nika, and he must have considered it a failure because it didn't have its own will. Because I think that's the real key that they're chasing here. I think that's why the fruit's a failure. It doesn't have its own will.
Right. And I think that's why you see the split, right, with the results of what the fruit can do as well. I think that's also a testament to that, where it fails, but now you're indisposed to just constantly laughing, because again there's this personality detachment from what the thing is. Again, these fruits have a will of their own, right? These entities, these powers, whatever, in regards to them, and that's more so seen when you have, again, like Kaido alludes to, like, this is more semblance of you being a Zoan type, you know what I mean? Like, this is what I would expect. This level of freedom even is what I would expect from this class of the fruit.
Yeah, and what they're kind of seeing here is that you could argue that all the failed smiles are would-be successes, but what we could have is there's legitimately only one true devil fruit can be active at a time. And so you could argue that all those failed smiles that just make people laugh are actually Hito no Mi smiles.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'd be like human fruit zones, and that's part of why they just end up laughing all the time.
Yeah. Again, a certain type of liberation, right? And you having to laugh, essentially.
And being free from, so it's like those ones end up being Hito no Mi zone that are downgraded versions or attempts of the Nika fruit. So it's like that they're technically the closest and the furthest from what they need. So the smiles that produce like the gorilla out your back are actually bigger failures than the ones that just turn you into a pleasure. But because of the results of those fruits, giving you an animal or whatever, something that you can actually fight with, it still works as a more successful one as far as all practicality and practical daily living.
I think another thing that is so I know a lot of people had, especially with Fire Force, Soul Eater, the caricature of like different things in the world. I noticed that there was a lot more resemblance of that in this chapter for Luffy. I also want to point out, I really appreciated, because we don't often get this, but Kaido gives us the coloring of what we're seeing. A lot of times, unless there's a color page, we're kind of left to kind of guess at what we expect the color to be, because it's like, oh, he's glowing of some sort, but we didn't know it was definitively white. And I think there's also a kind of a sense of storytelling element in the decision to make that white, and the fact that Haki in its form that we know it to be is black. I think all of this has a lot of significance, and like I said, it's just, I said this earlier that I trust Gege the way I trust Oda. I really trust Oda to deliver this story. I don't think anyone has written a story with a level of empathy, the level of care, and the level of precision that Oda has been writing One Piece with. And we've seen him, refine himself as he continues to tell this story. I at least I feel that way. Aniki, I don't know if you would agree, but I feel like we've watched Oda evolve and refine the way that he is telling this story to bring out the best of not only the characters that he's grown, I'm sure to love himself, but also just the world that he has created.
So I think that Oda has done a really good job of exploring the world and fleshing it out. I think sometimes he loses himself a little bit, just only in the sense that, like, sometimes his humor, like the Kennymon running around farting thing, it might have kind of made sense because Law wasn't the one that put them back together. You probably should have had Kaido slash him at least instead of stabbing him to make it a bit more believable.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, like the fart gag, I was just like, all right, bro, this is not the time for fart jokes. but at that same time, it's him trying to maintain that joy through the story and always trying to have something like funny. So what ends up happening is that just sometimes the theme of the story is met, it just doesn't execute that well, but it's a dedication to his themes that I can still respect at least. And like even when you look at something as goofy as this, where you have him like becoming like a free-flowing cartoon character, that both makes it be like ridiculous and add like humor to his fight, sure, but it also kind of plays into the mystery and like the general good character design and attention to detail that we've come to appreciate out of some of the more other stuff that Oda's done. Like, for example, Luffy having the white hair, having the steam that we've been seeing since Gear 2, and finally having that be like the completed bow, and like the fact that that steam bow was always there when he was in Gear 4, kind of letting us know that that's always been like more to do with the sun god, and letting us know that's kind of always been planned out. And I'm here for that kind of stuff. So it's like, even if you don't enjoy the more comedic aspect, you can kind of enjoy the fact that like even when you look at when Kaido talks about like this freedom is more associated with zones, it's kind of like Luffy replicating the points and thinking of where it's arguable Luffy would have had access to a full giant form from the moment he discovered the Gear 3. He just needed to figure out how to distribute the air through his body properly. But he didn't think of it to that potential, and now that he's like seeing it that way, well, he's like, yeah, my whole body can inflate that. Right. And I can maintain my proportions and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think he's even thinking about some of this stuff, which is why, again, that freedom of like, it's whatever is possible. And I think we kind of touched on it. I guess we kind of touched on that idea last week. I was saying like I also wanted to see what the kickback was from him being in that form, and we got that, but we still was like, nope, that's not the end. So I really did also like that about this chapter, because it was like he was drained. Like
he got all wrinkly and old man looking.
Like he experienced life to its fullest, and then we saw a very drained, wrinkly, void of life almost, if you will, a Luffy. But I think also the idea of like, again, we kind of talked again of this overarching point of like, you know, what shonen is, and the fact that Oda is writing this story like for the youth, but like for anyone. So understanding that child inside of you, that you can kickstart that heart back. You can kickstart that heart back to give you the moment of freedom and joy that is possible, you know, and that we all, you know, we all can really do that. Again, it's like we have the propensity to elicit ourselves and to inspire that joy from within ourselves. And I think that's I think it's just great.
And like you mentioned, like that beat scene where he's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna keep fighting. And it reminds me, it's like similar to like that Gear 2 moment against Lucci where Usopp has to cheer him on. Except it's more like even without having to worry about it, he's thinking about his comrades and the people he's fighting for and remembering that. And that's why I kind of like that as he's getting his heartbeat going again and focusing, you can see the ink leaving him, so to speak. Like, you know, usually when you see this kind of the all white cartoon, it's like they get like a little drop placed on them and then their dyes and stuff flood off and then they end up all white. Instead, it's like it's all building upwards towards his hat, which I guess is another thing that we can talk about, which is Joy Boy's big hat. Because like Luffy's wearing the hat now, and in giant form, I'm sure the hat was big too. But my question is, do you think that like when Joy Boy died, do you think he was in giant form and like took off that straw hat, and that's why there's the big straw hat in Mary Schwa?
Yeah, I think it has something to do, like you said, the concentration upwards kind of thought process. I think you're trending in the thought process that I kind of had as well, and I think that there might even be life still in that hat. We talk about the breadth of life and all of these other different things. There's a lot of talk around life, soul, and like just entity and the way the strength of the voice and all these different things in One Piece. And I really have a feeling that like I said, there's something else to be said there. So I think to short answer, I think yes. I think possibly in giant form. I think ultimately the freedom of what that is important. Again, a world also where giants are just a casual thing. Again, we kind of talked about that last week, where it's like it's not just giants, like there's just regularly stupid large people. Like, you know, a giant is huge, but there's also just random like 15 and 20-foot people who aren't even giants to begin with. So like the body is the not being restrained. You know, I keep thinking about that, like the unrestrained, the unbounded kind of thing that Luffy represents.
Which, and when you think about it now, we've seen Gear 3 reverse Luffy's aging so that he became a child temporarily. And now we're seeing Gear 5 make him like an old man. Gear 4 took away all of his hockey. Gear 2 is supposed to just cause a bunch of strain and in theory burn off lifespan. But what we're kind of seeing here is that when you have this freedom of existence, all those costs, I don't know if he's actually going to be like paying for them for real long term. And I think to a certain degree with this devil fruit specifically, whether or not it kills you and or not kind of comes down to whether or not you can awaken and then master that awakening. Because I think once you master that awakening, it really is kind of the most ridiculous fruit, because the maintaining the white form is to a certain degree maintaining your most free sail. It's like, imagine a permanently awakened Luffy like the Impel Guards. Then that means he's at permanent maximum creativity, permanent maximum. So it's like he becomes truly like a cartoon character in that sense, where he's got like his eternal like his character design. Now, no matter what outfit Luffy's in, as soon as he transforms into Gear 5, it's all white. It's some variation of the shorts, the shirt, and the sash.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so, and I think so. Someone's comment from the chat as well. Like, I think like we talked about it last week. I think there's some drawback period. Gear 2 is the boiling of self almost, right? Mm-hmm. So like this is like this man's heartbeats is not just so fast but so loud that it can be heard outside of the body that is encapsulating it. Even Gear 3 and Gear 4, this man is manipulating his bone structure beyond where it's supposed to be naturally. So all of these things have some type of drawback or some type of kickback to them. You know what I mean? I think there's just something to be said about that period. And I think like we talked about last week, Aniki, is like he gets better at it though. He gets more efficient at it as he continues to master things. So Gear 2 does not, I don't imagine Gear 2 taking anywhere near the toll that Gear 2 took to initially activate. Now. It doesn't. You know, if it was chipping away at his life percentage at like 70% conversion rate, it's like 15% now. And eventually he's going to get to a mastery even with this, where it's going to be a lot. But the thing is, Joy Boy died before. Luffy isn't unstoppable. I think that's another thing that's a point of like this universe, is like no one is so unstoppable. You know, Kaido's existed forever, but there's always been this sense of like, again, I guess we keep talking about it, the sense of like balance that kind of has to exist in the world kind of thing. And so I think there's a role to be played for Joy Boy. I think, like I said, I think if Joy Boy is a personality, I don't think it overtakes Luffy by any type of means. I'm talking about like the whole voice thing, and like, okay, when he was knocked out, there was like, okay, that's Luffy's voice back and it's fading. I think even though when it was like, okay, Luffy's voice is gone, like I think Luffy's voice had to literally swallow itself internally. And that's why the presence of the voice being completely gone and him basically being in a state of death. The series has not shied away from that. Luffy died. If we didn't understand that, Luffy did in fact die in this fight. And even again, he says it, Kaido says it, was like, I thought you were gone. He's like, bro, I was gone. Luffy was like, no, I was definitely gone. I too thought I was defeated. But I am back here now with all of this freedom and power and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And that's kind of why when we talked about zone fruits having a will of their own, I feel like Nika has to, on some level, exist within the fruit. Like,
Right.
and I think that has to be part of what finally got him to wake up. And so, if he's operating while losing his voice, it would be kind of nice to. This is the perfect opportunity to really expand on Zoans now, because like we've got the mythical dog we got the Hito Nomi, like being a Maru model by that fox. We've had at least, what is that, like 3-4 mythical zones in one arc? Because like we got the Momotaro story, so now you have Peach Boy and Momo, you have the dog, you got the pheasant. Like all we're really waiting for at this point is basically Marco to go to the root, and I'm kind of what's the big reveal that, because like even Gear 5 feels like Gear 5 doesn't feel like it's supposed to be the big reveal yet, which is what's crazy about this. So there's something else at play here.
And we talked about that, whether it's a Gear 6 or some type of manipulation of Gear 5. This is nowhere close to being the final of what this entity power form is. There's no way.
And that's okay. So that was one of the things that I thought was interesting. Is I remember last week I'd asked like, what's up with his hockey? Is he using it? Is he not using it? Because we're not seeing any black. And then apparently we just don't get to see it anymore because Kaido is saying he's using armament and Supreme King hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And so that leads me to go, okay, like if Gear 5 is really going to be the final transformation, what else are we going to be seeing out of this? Because yeah, it's kind of clear that he's playing into the cartoon gag, of course, when he punches through Kaido's face, just like when he reached out of his eyeballs. But obviously that punch isn't going to be the final part of this battle.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if it was, Luffy would have taken him out by now.
And
like
so,
there's been enough strikes and hits that like if this power up was the power, the almightiest of the powers, right?
mm-hmm.
It would have taken a hit. It would have taken a hit, maybe two, because Kaido's that guy. But like it wouldn't be a fight at this point if this power was unlocked to the extent that it's supposed to be unlocked.
And one of the things that I do like about this is that when Kaido sees Luffy tired out and gets exasperated, that moment of relaxation lets the pain kind of hit, because you see he like drops to his knee and it's like, but it's like we know that one punch that we see at the end of the chapter, because like Luffy gets hit because like when he's doing the jump rope move, sure, but like most of what Luffy does this chapter is kind of more gaggy than actual damaging, because he gets like swallowed and he inflates Kaido up a bunch and then manages to climb out. And like, yeah, okay, cool. He took some damage inside as Luffy bounced around the pipe system. But it's like, he goes up, and then when Luffy manages to escape and comes down as a giant, since he immediately goes into Gum jump rope, outside of the like force of like, whoa, I'm being spun around, it's not like Kaido was taking any damage. So yeah, you get that blast breath.
I think the will's being enacted upon Kaido too with every touch.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And like, so it's like, but then you see like blast breath, and then when Luffy comes back again, like, you know, doing the Roadrunner thing, like spinning his hand like he's gonna hit Kaido, gets his head smacked into the, you know, into the back down through the live floor, and that's when you get the whole everybody's looking with their eyes popping up thing. And then he gets, you know, that's when he's like recharging, pops back up and gets smacked again. So it's like we see him get smacked like 3 or 4 times this chapter, and then he lands like maybe one good blow, and that's that punch at the end. So it's kind of like I feel like we either like I can't see this next chapter happening and the fight continuing beyond it unless we completely cut away, and that would be really weird to do right now.
Yeah, I think you end up like there's supposed to be some high stakes after this. I think you end up being a little bit too critical, and then you have to remember CP0 is waiting to swoop in.
Yeah,
like they're waiting. They're like, it doesn't matter how this fight concludes, they're about to intervene again. We already know that much. Whether there's another force that comes and intervenes on their intervening, that's still to be seen. But like we know for a fact, without a doubt, that like don't get it twisted, don't get caught up, don't forget, yeah, because he smacked that one CP0, but Kaido's exhausted now. He was putting up the strong front from the first fight, the first half of their fight, you know. So like this is like, even if Kaido came out on top, like he ain't about to roar no battle cry heavy. This is about to hurt. Same thing for Luffy. Even if he ends up winning this fight, he's not about to just walk around like everything is perfectly fine, you know. Is going to be something different. We definitely going to see some actions from Momo and Yamamoto in the next, you know, we'll be seeing some, you know, some action again, there's some progress again. And again, you have to, I try to pay very good attention to the timing and placement of the Straw Hat crew in different chapters. So I already know something else with a couple of different characters is about to pop up because they haven't been in the chapters for a chapter 2 or 3. So we'll see exactly how the roles and the situations play. Don't forget that this island is floating in a descending manner towards there's other things going on here actively.
You just reminded me that because Zoro was last seen being saved by Frankie.
Yep.
And Sanji, we saw him last chapter.
We did see him last chapter.
Where he woke up and was like, Luffy?
Right. And he was like the first and the reason that he woke up is basically the heartbeat, the voice. Again, speaking to Sanji's character. And again, we saw Sanji having some deeper powers that he is still trying to sort through. You know, that he's still trying to come to terms with. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here with the Straw Hat crew specifically.
And so, and that's kind of one of the things too that I think is kind of cool is that like the entire past like 20 chapters, like really since we hit like chapter 1010, the theme has just been awakening. Whether it's Sanji awakening his cyborg genetics, Zoro awakening his conqueror's haki, because the main thing that I've seen like a lot of people kind of omit and not fully realize, partially because of what Toei does, where they like to add these scenes in, is that Zoro, when he cut Kaido was like, oh, you used the color of the Supreme King. And Zoro was like, huh?
No, I just cut you because I wanted to. like I really wanted to cut you.
So my thing is that Enma is bringing out the best in Zoro, because it's like forcing him to like really commit to his haki, and it's like, okay, cool, now he's like getting tapping into that, you know, like the conqueror's haki. Because one of my theories was that, and like part of like is that the Ashura thing is literally a manifestation of his conqueror's haki, like because the image and belief in Santori was so strong that it manifests as Ashura, the three-headed deity, to also, you know. And that's part of where, like, if Sanji's fire, because Sanji's fire has been explained to not be the byproduct of genetics, but because of friction or his heat that he can generate with his passion. But if you just take that literally, then you could look at like his flames almost as an extension of a type of his haki. And so it could, and we now know that based on the what's been kind of stated about CP9 and some of the stuff, it kind of seems like they were fighting people who had haki pre-time skip, and we know they did for sure with an L.
For sure.
Where, and like with Zoro, with cutting through steel, with Shishi Son, where you could kind of look at it as, for certain moves pre-time skip, the Straw Hats were using haki. They just didn't know.
Unconsciously tapping into haki. And it's kind of explained that way to Luffy when you see his training arc explained that like, you've had access to this. you've had access to it in different forms. It's just triggers to different things, right? Like even the whole A scene and his haki like erupting because of that. Like it was always there, but like everything, like there's just triggers to different things.
And one of the things that is even worth noting is that when Ace unlocked armament in the novels, he just did it. It wasn't like a thing that he was like, oh, I've learned about haki. It was like he was fighting someone, and in the middle of fighting them, his arm turned black. And, you know, he's like, well, it's helping me fight better, so I'm going to keep trying to do it.
Right.
So
yeah, the different mentalities definitely play a big role. Any other key points from the chapter, man, that you wanna bring up?
Let's see, because like I feel like this chapter was largely like a lot of fun, and less like total dissection. But yeah, no, because like outside of whether or not we expect this fight to be over by like chapter 1050, and the way I look at it is Zunisha is here to save Wano from falling, or Onigashima from falling, and to take out the world government ships, because they were going to annex Wano anyway. So it makes sense that if Kaido loses, somebody has to stop Onigashima from destroying Wano, and then somebody also is going to have to stop the world government from moving in, and that gives time for like the Grand Fleet to show up at Wano. Because I'm a big believer that the Grand Fleet needs to actually contribute some shit to Wano, because how the hell did you see? Like,
it almost seems like a waste. It almost seems like a waste to even talk about it at that point, for it to not have been a factor to this specifically this arc.
Like, if it's not going to come into play until the actual final war arc, then they're calling them a Grand Fleet. Just no.
And we already know that a couple key people in regards to the Grand Fleet are either there or close by. So again, the pieces are all very close by. It's a matter of like where the domino is placed kind of thing, like which one of the pieces are going to get knocked over next kind of thing. But I agree, even to like the comment there, like I said, I'm not sure, but I think Fujitora, again, I'm still a very big proponent of like rectifying the darkness within the Marines, and I think Fujitora plays a key role in that. So I think even Fujitora stepping in and being like, I don't know what this CP nonsense is, but here's what you're not about to do. You're not about to manipulate the history of what's happening behind the backs of the people. And I think that's the type of thing that I could see Fujitora stepping in and having a say in, or even someone else stepping in and kind of just, you know, whatever. We know some of the warlords are just on ships floating in the sea. Like there's just so much that like the positioning of so many things that could be going on right now. Like I said, we haven't seen Boa in a long time. I'm looking forward to seeing Boa show face, even if it's just for a moment again. So yeah, I definitely think much like Black Clover, not in the essence of it being fully over, but in the essence of like this arc, or this portion of this arc is about to be completed very much so over the course of the next couple of chapters. We're definitely not leaving Wano expediently, but this fight is over.
Yeah, like this fight has to be, and that's one of the things that they mentioned was the final enemy of Wano, and that kind of seemed to suggest that Kaido wasn't the final enemy. And my personal theory for this has been for a while now that the final enemy of Wano will pop up in Act 5, and it will be something that's sent in response to Zunisha destroying the world government ships. And that'll be the SSG getting its first test run. And like the SSG will be a cyborg made from the body of Horus III.
I like that.
Because you remember, we never technically got a hard conclusion on whether or not Horus III died or not. We know that, and like Moria was like, don't damage the body too much because I want to use his corpse. So all like Moria being kicked out of the government doesn't stop somebody else from utilizing that plan.
Yeah, same thing with Vegapunk. Like Vegapunk, still other people were trying to continue his research at different point in times. So like I like that. I really like that. I really try, you guys, not to put myself in headcanon space too much.
No, I know.
One Piece. So oh my, look who's trying to join. Johnny come lately. Is trying to connect, but I really try not to put myself in too much headcanon space. So I want to see things actively happening as I'm essentially basically, reading and watching One Piece.
Oh my goodness, look who it is.
Hello there, caller.
Caller in, Vash here. I'm here from my van from work. Don't judge the background.
All right, we were getting pretty close.
Yeah.
You came at the right time.
Yeah, like almost. It's like, come on, hurry up. But yeah, here we go. Did you read the chapter?
Yes, I did read the chapter. I just read it literally 1 minute ago, just now before I came on the call.
All right, so you
all right,
gotta
there,
talk
caller.
talk.
Please give us your thoughts.
Yo, I just want to say, this makes sense for Luffy's character. I saw people already talking about it this morning. I didn't see what everyone said, but I saw some people saying that this don't make sense. But even Kaido said it in the second to last page that he is this power has so much freedom of what you could do with it. I'm just paraphrasing, but even Kaido, he noticed it about it, so it makes sense for what was used and what was done in this chapter with Luffy's power. So it made sense.
Yeah, no, like I understand people being like, man, I wanted the serious fight to be at least a little serious. But Oda has straight up told us he likes to spread joy and he wants people to be smiling and happy.
Yeah, exactly. Like the whole time Luffy was smiling, and he even said that I'm not afraid of dying. Like it shows that he's having the most fun he can, and I believe he said in the chapter that he just wants to have some fun or something like that. He said so. It shows that this is the point of Oda's character. Like Luffy, even with Gear 2nd, Gear 4th, yes, Gear 4th in tank mode was kind of serious, but he was still funny and goofy. Snake Man mode was still more powerful, more bouncing everywhere, but he was still the same funny Luffy that he always been. Now Gear 5 or whatever of what Kaido calls it, his type of awakening mode. So it depends of what we see, but this is the most true Luffy we see since Gear 1 all combined with them.
Yeah, I'd almost beg to differ because I feel like even like you said, like the level of freedom that is given at each gear just increases, which is again a gear. As you go up a gear, there is a greater level of freedom that is, this is basically present. You even in the comparison to like the two different forms of Gear 4, we get Snake Man later. But Snake Man is literally, you see more movement in the ability to move the body around. And, even before that, you see the ability to fly based off of the propulsion and all these, like the freedom, again, Aniki was talking to that a little earlier. It's like the freedom is really the core principle of what One Piece is.
Yeah. And plus to add to that, like I saw this morning that some people was bothered by the eyeballs of the crew when they reacted to about Luffy coming down. But I'm like, it makes sense. Like, that's his crew. His crew will be the extra cartoony instead of everyone else because they're part of Luffy. They are what motivates Luffy to have the extra type of freedom because he wants his crew and himself to be the most free people in the world. So it made sense for that to happen.
Oda's always been doing the cartoony eyes out of head thing, though. I don't understand why people are really shocked by this. Like, even so many times Chopper has that reaction.
Yes.
Or so many times you see Usopp Chopper.
It's a derivative of an L face.
Yeah, like you see them do it. The jaw drop, the big head, like oh my god. And it's not just Luffy. It's like you said, it's like the whole crew.
And plus, like, it reminds you a lot of the cartoon about our boy Popeye. Those expressions were there in the show of Popeye, and it makes sense because Popeye is very similar to Luffy in the aspect because he was the most freedom cartoony person in the character, but he did the most extra shit when he was the MC because he was the main MC and he had the most freedom of the show, and he had the most expressive aspects of his own show, and that's the same thing with Luffy. So. And plus, Kaido was even enjoying this fight. Like, he was questioning about the awakening, about the devil fruit. And when I read that, when even Kaido brought up about the devil fruit, it reminded me about what Aniki brought up last week, that we have never gotten the box about Luffy. And I'm like, at first last week, I was like, wait, Aniki's right. But then when even Kaido brought it up too, like, yo, what fruit do you have then? And that made me question, like, shit, Aniki was right about that shit. Is that means we never have actually gotten the actual confirmation of what Luffy's type of devil fruit was, even for us as the audience to know about it. We were just told by Shanks and by Luffy, but we never have truly known what's in the box. So that was some dope type of confirmation in a way, but from Kaido for us as the audience. So that was dope.
Yeah, so let me read this real quick for you guys and for the audience as you continue talking about this, because I think it's relevant, this portion here. It says, Luffy says, "Oh yeah, I was dying before this. Wow, it takes a lot of energy." And Kaido's like, he's like, "You have my praise, my honor. I'm gonna honor you after this." Kaido gives his little spiel, and he's like, "I don't need any." Luffy's like, I don't need any of that." Like, and then there's this point here. He huffs. He's like, "Once we're dead, the only thing that's left is bones."
That's interesting too.
And he continues with his monologue. We've gotten so many good monologues out of this Wano arc. But again, it's this point of, like, again, we were talking to Aniki about like Luffy died. I don't care what anybody said. Luffy effectively died in this fight. And then he goes on, like, another couple pages in, and he calls out, he's like, "Momo Tama." And I think it's such super relevance because he calls out Tama. I think that's a little overlooked in that section of him, like, yo, we're not done yet, right? Like, we still have more to prove, again, even though we know that we're talking again to this notion of shonens, like, Luffy is still talking to the next generation as well. You know what I mean? He's still like, yo, we still have something to do here. We still have something to prove to you all.
And plus, I want to add to that as well, is that it makes me question, is that, was this a mix of both Luffy and Joe Boy talking, or was that more with Joe Boy just talking for Luffy with his knowledge, knowing that he's been inside Luffy the whole time? So that's what makes me intrigued about this.
Isn't that why the hat?
About this type of monologue.
He was there with the adventure with them. Isn't that the whole point of his hat?
Well, Luffy is in theory supposed to give the hat back to Shanks, but I do see Luffy passing it on as a more likely.
Because like when you guys discuss about the big hat, like, it could have been a giant, or else it's just his whole body of entity is that hat, and I guess whichever more straw hats that got traveled with it, it's a connection to Joe Boy.
Yeah, something about will of some D or something as well, just limmering in the background of the One Piece world. So, definitely interesting to see.
Yeah, like, it's very intriguing to see what's going to continue with the next monologues in the next couple of chapters, because I feel like Joe Boy is going to be dropping more deep conversations that a lot of people is going to miss, and the more that with the fact continues with Kaido, I feel like we're gonna learn more about the past and more about the Joe Boy aspect.
So let me ask you both this. Sorry, Aniki, you look like you was about to say something, but just real quick, I was just wondering, y'all think Kaido dies at the conclusion of this fight?
I have a hard time believing that Kaido is actually going to die. At least I don't see any of the Straw Hats being responsible for Kaido's death.
I agree.
That's how I felt about it for a long time. I can't see a Straw Hat being the one to kill Kaido, because Luffy doesn't kill like his main villains like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably killed at least a couple dozen, 100 fodder by now, but he doesn't kill the main villains.
Yep.
And any Straw Hat actually getting to execute Kaido is a form of upstaging Luffy, which you got to think, like, this arc, hands down, Oda was like, nobody in Luffy's generation gets to be better than Luffy in any perceivable way. Of
course.
Like, and to a certain degree, it was like, damn, he kind of did, even like, he did do Zoro a little dirty here, because like when, at chapter 1000, when you get that red rock, it's like, Luffy's armament hockey is better than like what we got out of Zoro so far, and like any of the people on that roof, everybody's like, oh, he's got special armament hockey. By the end of like that first round with Kaido and Big Mom, it's like, he's not conscious, sure. Like, the only thing he's been able to be outclassed in is like strategy and utility. and now he's making up for the utility too with this, with like being able to bend the environment and stuff. But it's like you have that, so it's like cool, like Law and them were able to teleport away or whatever. But it's like Luffy was getting upstaged by was not going to get upstaged, and he has Supreme Haki. So it's like, okay, cool. We see the other two get their fight off, and they actually get to win their fights, and we see Zoro unlock like ACOC coding, and it's like Oda was like, okay, cool. Zoro has an ability like similar to one of the abilities that Luffy has access to, even though like we're not even touching the future sight thing that Luffy has to be special too. But then it's like, oh, and then like Law versus Kid happens, and it's like, boom, both of them are pulling out awakenings and stuff, and it's like, oh man, that's crazy. He's got access to this, and then it's like, no, they are not allowed to be better with their fruits. So he's got awakening, and he's got ACOC, and he's got advanced armament, and he's got advanced future sight. So he's better than everybody. He's got like all the metrics that you need to like have covered now. And when you talk about like raw physicals, he's a hand-to-hand fighter. So in theory, the only person who's going to keep up with that is like Sanji, but he's fighting Kaido. He has the ability to amp his physicality, just like Sanji amps his physicality through his awakening. So it's like, no matter what, Luffy was painted to be on top, the number one of the worst generation, even people who aren't in the worst generation officially, like Sanji. It's like,
but
you also get the scale back of the other worst generation that was there on the island. So you also see them, they're like in a whole tier below. So they're like tier 3, tier 4. Then you got, you know, Law, Kid, and Zoro. And then it's just like the gap between if that's class A, like if this is rank S, like Luffy is categorically, like you said, it's just he is definitively beyond where the rest of his peers are.
But makes sense for that, because I don't know why people was always hoping for Zoro to be better than Luffy in one class, or, you know, Haki this, which it never made sense. Because like, if people know what pirate ship is, your captain is the captain because he's the best at everything. That's how it usually goes in storylines or anything like that. And also when you're the MC in a shonen, like, yeah, you expect something, you know, different, like JJK Undead. But the thing is, One Piece has been out for 20 years, so it still had the old trope and the old type of shonen style. But Oda has changed a couple, you know, cool twists and ideas. But the end is still a core shonen story, and with the MC, and he's the captain of his own ship. He's the captain of his own ship that has to be the top dog and the top dog in his first generation. So for this to be him having future sight, having gear fit, Joe Boy, it makes sense for his character. The one who in the manga, in the first chapter, said that he wants all the freedom in the world. This makes sense for his character as Joe Boy, and who has the most freedom. To like Kaido said, that he is using his own fruit with the most freedom around the area where he got hit. There's no damage. The way Boy said giant, like my dude was a giant in the sky. Like, what else can you ask for? Like, he literally could stretch and be bouncy at his own free will. That's dope as hell.
And we've seen Luffy pre-Grand Line and post-Grand Line enact the idea that everyone deserves to be free. Nami deserves to be free. All the princesses deserve to be free. This island deserves to be free. If I gotta put everything under my protection, if Luffy has to put everything under Luffy's protection, then everyone's gonna get to be free to whatever they want to do.
What I'm curious, my last thoughts about it is that how many times is he gonna die? Because he died twice in pre-time skip. If I'm correct, this is the first time he has died in post-time skip. Is that correct?
So I think so. The way I kind of look at this is, it's fitting that Luffy achieves this godhood state against a dragon, because it kind of reminds me of like Goku and the transforming and having to be resurrected or restored by the dragon. So it's like an interesting like kind of play, and you got like this 5-minute timer for before Namek, aka Wano, gets destroyed. So it's weird, but I still like it. It just,
yeah, me too. Like, I have no problem with him like dying, because he died twice in pre-time skill. When he got shot by my kind, you know, boy was close to death, like in front of death's door. And the other time is when he got surgery back in Impa down, by him fighting the poison dude, and he literally had to get surgery, like almost OD by the second commander in the Revolutionary Army. I forget his name. Jack Queen. I forgot.
Yeah.
So like that's twice death in pre-time skill. Now post-time skill 1. So maybe he might die one more time in post, or maybe just 3 times altogether. Who knows?
I mean, I kind of consider, I know he survives it, but I also kind of consider the impel down poison to be a death.
Oh yeah, there is one. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot. You could argue Marineford is very close to him pretty much being dead. The whole thing that he has to go through afterwards, because he doesn't ever fully recover from impel down. He's taken to train, and Riley and Boa kind of nurse him back to a certain state. And then even if you don't consider it physically, he was emotionally destroyed. Yeah. he definitely emotionally died after Marineford. So
I was getting smacked around by Jinbei because of how hard he was wild.
That's true. Boy scream my head like, yo, boy, wake the fuck up. You have to realize if you want to save your other friends, you need to get stronger. So yeah.
Yeah, Jinbei was basically like, all that hurt feeling shit don't matter, bro. Like, your feelings can be hurt as long as they want to be, but that ain't gonna change the fact that we got to get this bread. Nah, but for real, like Jinbei was like, dude, energy in the wrong stuff. Put it where it needs to go. Like,
my last thoughts is that I'm curious to see what the next chapter is gonna be and how Momotama is gonna help Luffy. Like knowing that he's the one that's understanding this in a way or seeing this happen in front of him. Mm-hmm. My expectations to see how is he going to be involving with this, because he's been involved with Luffy for the past 30, 60 chapters in one already, and he's been very intriguing with all this going on with Luffy, Joe Boy, with the elephant and everything else. I'm curious to see what are they going to be addition to Luffy help versus Kaido, or help with Wano and the rest of the arc. So I'm really curious about that.
Need that Momo blast breath.
I want it. Don't expect it, but I do want it. Yeah. You know, Luffy just awakened everyone by everything that he's doing. So people are gonna just do even more weird, random, amazing things along the way.
I mean, Roger did that for every pirate in the entire world. Like Luffy could do the same thing.
That's true.
Start inspiring people now.
I said Luffy already doing it. You see, Princess Shirahoshi change. You see a lot of people categorically change just from interacting with Luffy. So
that's very true. Well, then that was my last thoughts on this chapter.
Okay. Everybody good?
Thank you, caller, for calling in. This is Anime Lately. We'd love to have you here. Thank you for tuning in.
But before you leave, please give us your outros. Oh, I'm sorry, your plugs. This new slang that's in tone on.
Oh man, yeah, I got y'all. So you can follow me as per usual. It's Kendall KendellxAnime on QuirkChat, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You know the vibes. You can also follow Conqueror Movement as well as my other affiliate. And of course, I'm gonna hand it off to Vash.
You can find me always on LegendDVash on Twitter, on social media, where you can find me on Work Production. And you can find me on Anime Podcast this Thursday, Steeples Villains this Friday, where I'll be hosting. And definitely on Shonen Ronin next week, I'll be here. So it's going to be a fun week. Definitely find me, and I appreciate for Aniki being here as a guest as always. So I appreciate for you being here.
Thank you, Vash. Aniki Smash FSP. You can find me at that name anywhere you need to find. Nobody else has that name. Just if you need me, Aniki Smash FSP. Or look up Church of MHA. Those are the main things. It's where you always find me. Next week we'll be back. Church of MHA, plus I should be here on Shonen Ronins. Appreciate everybody that came through as always, and I appreciate you guys for always having me on. And appreciate Kendall for coming through too, because I enjoyed chopping it up with you in these streams.
Yes, sir. Sam,
you're mute. Sam, you're mute.
thank you guys for watching, listening, all that stuff like that. You can always follow me on SamtheMangaMan. Remember to like the video if you haven't yet. Press that subscribe button. We're trying to reach 3K. It's been long enough. We gotta reach 3K somehow, one way or another. But thank you guys, and you got Aniki for joining us. We will be back with another episode next week with a return of My Hero Academia. With JJK will be on break, and yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll give it. Let's see what happens if I can try to catch up to One Piece, and we can all have a full-on One Piece talk. Because apparently we can't do it for Attack on Titan. So thank you guys. Wow. Have a good one. Peace.